Isn't it about time for somebody's favorite radio program?
Yeah.
97.3 ESPN presents The Sports Bash with Mike Gill.
When I'm driving, I got a guy on the radio who talks to me. I can't see him, but he talks to me.
Now, live from inside the Ocean Casino Resort Studio, here's Mike Gill.
Happy Hour Friday starts now. Holy mackerel, we made it to Friday. The Sports Bash live, 97.3 ESPN, the 97.3 ESPN free mobile app. I'm your host, Mike Gill, streaming live video on the X platform at 973 ESPN. Use the hashtag SB Live. How's everybody's Friday? It's hot as heck out there. My gosh. Is it football season yet? Can we get a fall Sunday? You skip right past all this hot, lousy, steamy weather that we're supposed to have. I'm all for that. Football, anybody want to start it up? Phil's last night, they lose. A lot to talk about on that loss last night. We also want to get into something about the Eagles. This came up like 2-3 weeks ago. We brought it up on the show, and then I saw another article about this, and it was similar but better. I'll explain coming up. Sal Paolantonio is here. It's a Sal Pal Friday on the Sports Bash, 97.3 ESPN. Sal Pal will join me at 3 o'clock. Bob Wankel will talk some Phils at 3:30. We'll also get into some football with Adam Kaplan for football at 4 today. We'll start with the Phils, who lost in Boston last night. You know, and I am not surprised that the Phils lost in Boston last night. I'm not surprised that Aaron Nola looked a little sluggish last night. He just simply didn't have it last night. There's a lot you could take from the game. You know, Nola, 8 days off between starts. He looked like a guy that had 8 days off between starts. And you can even question whether the Phillies could have used Nola earlier. They had all those off days. It was a tough kind of thing to navigate through. Like, did they really need to pitch Taijuan Walker in London? Could they use Nola in London? I thought that we were going to see this on Tuesday night. I thought we would see the sluggish Phillies. You know, we talked about it on Tuesday. Like, hey, you're coming home from London. Then you got to go to Boston. And then you got to go to Baltimore this weekend. Like, some point, this was going to kind of catch up to you, I felt. Ricky Vitalico brought it up on the post-game last night. I mean, he kind of went into it that he just flat out doesn't like the fact that the Phillies played in London in the middle of the season. They're like, do they really have to do this? Look, it was a great event. I loved it. I would go back every time the Phillies play. I will be in London if the Phillies play in London again. But it is a unfortunate time that you have to stick it right in the middle of the season and you have to keep playing. And it is what it is. But the Phillies, I thought, would look like this on Tuesday. They actually came out and looked pretty good on Tuesday. They won that game behind Zach Wheeler. But Wheeler had, Nola had 8 days off between starts. 27 games Nola started before last night on 6 or more days rest. He has a higher ERA than his normal day. He's just not as good when he has rest. And last night, he just got hit hard. He got hit all over the place. You almost felt bad for him at the time. Like, hey, you going to get this guy out of the game? You going to, do something here? And there was a point in the game where Nola got hit pretty hard, and even McCarthy's like, they're going to have to get somebody up. And it almost seemed like no one in the bullpen was all that interested in getting up. Like, no one was like, hey, pick me. It was like, hey, Soto, you ready? And he's like, me? Again? Really? Like, didn't have a lot of interest in pitching last night. I think a lot of these guys are kind of probably tired. And it's understandable. Like, they played in London, flew back, on the road, still in a hotel. That's a lot, man. And it sounds like excuse making. It's not. They lost. They got beat by the Sox last night. They got hit around. But I got to imagine that you got to push through this. You just got to find a way to try to win a game in Baltimore, maybe 2. But this is why you've built the lead. This is why you have a 9-game lead right now. Is you're lucky to have a 9-game lead because you can navigate your way, hopefully, around it. You got a rough part of the schedule. Okay, we went to London, had a good time, got to experience that. Now we got to go on the road. The schedule makers did them no favors. They put them in London and then put them on the road right afterwards. Not ideal. It is what it is. You got to figure your way through it last night. Figure your way through it this weekend, I should say. Last night, I mean, look, there's a couple ways to look at this. Nola didn't have it last night, but you almost had to keep him out there. I see people wondering why they kept Nola when he obviously didn't have it last night. Well, because you could see the bullpen had been kind of saying, hey, we're not really interested in pitching tonight either. We didn't want to bring somebody in to pitch in after the night before you had to go to the bullpen early. They didn't want to have to go to guys and ask them to pitch. Look at the guys they pitched last night. Kerkering, Hoffman, and those guys came into a game when they were losing by 5 runs. So they were kind of tapped out with like the Turnbulls. Ruiz ended up coming in last night late in the game, but they didn't want to have to use the long guys last night. So I think Nola was kind of like, hey, sorry, buddy, you're going to have to take one tonight. And it's not normal that you ask one of your top end of the rotation pitchers to kind of take one for the team. But I think Nola kind of got asked last night, hey, man, we're going to need you to take one for the team. You got to try to get us through the 4th inning. Because why? We're going to Baltimore, and that team's really good. So now tonight, you ask yourself, is Kerkering available? Is Hoffman available? You know, those 2 guys had to come in last night because you had to use everybody else the day before. So it's befuddling to me that anybody would question why they would leave Nola out there. It sounds like, you know, if you're asking why Nola is out there, you really don't understand baseball all that much. Like, this is a game where sometimes the starting pitcher just has to take one for the team. I think Nola last night had to take one for the team. This isn't a game where Rob Thompson, if it's a playoff game, he's leaving Aaron Nola out there the way he was getting hit around last night. This is circumstance of time and score. You know that phrase where you tell people time and score? You know, when the other team's stealing bases and they're up by 10 runs, and you're like, dude, time and score, man. Like, we're down 10 runs and you're still stealing bases all over us? Like, come on, man. Well, last night was one of those moments. Aaron Nola was this was a circumstance of time and score. Nola bit the proverbial bullet last night for his bullpen because he was struggling along. He couldn't get through the 4th, but they didn't want to go to the bullpen, so they said, Nola, take one for the team. And Nola's a team player. He was frustrated. It was like, obviously that pitch was a big pitch in the game, right? Ball 4, or strike 3, I should say, and they called it a ball. They showed it a million times on the whatever cast it is, the replay, and it looks like a strike, obviously. And it's not called a strike, and that really changed the complexion of the 4th inning. I mean, you take a look at that 4th inning. If they get a strikeout there instead, I think the guy ended up doubling afterwards, if memory serves me. That's just a different game. It's a different situation, and who knows. But because if I remember, I want to say there was 2 outs at the time when that happened, and the next batter, I want to say, hit the home run because he's on my fantasy team, Trent O'Neill. I could have sworn, though, I think he hit a home run right after the single. So it looks like a strike 3, and in turn, it turns into a single RBI and then a home run, and now it's 8-3, and the game just kind of gets away from you at that point. So, you know, I think Nola kind of took one last night and unfortunately didn't have it, and they lose 8-3, and now they go down to Baltimore.
Yeah, so, Mike, it was 2 outs in the 4th inning. Nola started that inning, the line out to right by McGuire, then he walked Smith, then he struck out Raffaello. So he was right there. He was right there to get out of the inning. And they didn't give him the strike, which was absolutely insane. And everything went downhill from there.
Pretty much. Pretty much. Everything downhill from there. And Phillies have now lost 2 straight. Well, I think I heard them say last night, this is like the 3rd series in a row they've lost on the road. Was that something?
3rd straight road series.
Third straight road series that they lost. But
they're also elite at home, so it's like it kind of evens itself out.
Well, they're on the road this weekend, so keep that in mind. It's by the way, from what I understand, every game is sold out this weekend. All 3. Yeah, all 3 games sold out. It's going to be an electric atmosphere.
It's all because of you, Mike. You keep talking about Baltimore so much.
Yeah.
You keep telling people how great Baltimore is. Now they're going to take you over to town, and you're going to be like, can I get a beer?
Right. It's going to be packed. It's going to be a tale of 2 cities. The Philly fans are going to be down there in full force. The Baltimore fans are going to fill that place. It's a Saturday afternoon game, by the way. It's a 4:00 Fox game on Saturday, so that's cool. Couple good things from the game last night. Schwarber, 3 for 4, 3 RBI. He's up to 249. I mean, he's almost hitting 250 right now. Castellanos looked terrible. Couple strikeouts. He did have a hit last night. Harper got a hit. Stott hit in the 4-hole. Didn't like that decision. Didn't like their lineup at all last night. Sosa, Dahl struggling again. He's 0 for 4 with 2 strikeouts. That's your boy. Yep. Merrifield, my guy.
He also misplayed the ball off the wall in left field.
I'll give him a pass for that.
I'm not going to give him a pass. The guy's played in Major League Baseball. He should know that wall, you don't run right up to it.
If you don't play at that wall all the time, it can be difficult. So,
I feel like we've all watched enough baseball games where we can see that you don't run right to the wall.
Yeah, but he's not, I mean, you see this happen all the time. That wall takes some quirky bounces, so I'm not penalizing him for that. My guy, Merrifield, went 2 for 3. Your guy went 0 for 4 with 2 strikeouts.
So start Merrifield
how do you feel about that?
How do you like them apples?
Yeah, Stubbs had a hit, and Rojas 1 for 3. But Schwarber, I think, is really the big story here in that he doubled, a couple RBI. I think he had 3 RBI in the game last night. So, look, they're going down to Baltimore, losers of 2 straight. But I think last night's game, the messaging from last night, there's 2 messages. One, I don't think Nola should have been held out for 8 days. I think they could have pitched him in London. And who cares about Taijuan Walker? Quite frankly, I hate to say that about my guy Taijuan, but come on,
he's your
man.
guy now.
He pitched well when I was at the game in London. Yeah. Because I went to the game he pitched in London, so he was my guy for that day.
Okay.
He did pitch well in the London game. But quite frankly, come on, man. Walker, you could have bumped your 5th starter to keep Nola on track.
Yeah. I just don't understand what they were trying to do their best Josh Hennig impersonation. Mike, they were trying to be as literal as humanly possible with their rotation.
Don't do that, people. Don't do that.
Yeah, because then Aaron Nola gives up 8 runs against the Red Sox.
Yep, Nola gives up 8 runs, and if it was a playoff game, he's not getting kept in the game last night. I love how it just drives me nuts how people think that there's a lot of good, passionate sports fans out there, okay? A lot of good, passionate sports fans. They love sports. They watch every night. And to some extent, they know the game. But they are so dumb when it comes to the difference between a regular season game and a playoff game. Do you think Rob Thompson was going to leave Aaron Nola in a game last night if it was a playoff game the way that game was going?
Absolutely not.
Come on. And people are judging the manager based on the fact that he left Nola out there last night. I mean, come on, people. You're better than that. It's a game in June where the bullpen had pitched a bunch the day before. You have a very tough opponent coming up. You got to say to the pitcher, can you get me at least, I mean, they probably won at 5 last night, but that just wasn't going to happen.
Right.
So the way the manager managed the game last night is not with you in mind. It's not a playoff game. It's, hey, I got to get us to Friday, Saturday, Sunday with my bullpen back intact because we're playing one of the best teams in baseball. I don't want my bullpen taxed in a game that we just don't have it tonight. He knows that. I thought that some Phillies fans would know that, but evidently I'm giving them too much credit.
Yeah, well, apparently some guys thought it was October 13th and not June 13th.
Marsh 3 hits last night down at Double-A Reading. He's going to play center field tonight, and then I imagine he'll be in the lineup on Saturday. In Baltimore, maybe Trey Turner joins him. We'll see.
Hopefully,
That's the
fingers
news
crossed.
there. So what happens when that goes? We'll talk to Bob Wankel later. But Marsh will come back. I'm interested to see if Dahl's the guy that goes down. Is it Weston Wilson? Is it Pache? Who is the guy that's the odd man out in the outfield? I don't say center field mix.
Outfield mix, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think Rojas is safe.
I think Rojas is safe too because he's not hitting nowhere as bad as he did at the start of the year.
No, I mean, Rojas last night went 1 for 3. That ups his average, by the way, to 233. I mean, He's been more productive than Castellanos, for God's sakes. They're about the same. I mean, Castellanos obviously has more power numbers than
No,
Rojas
but the point
does.
is that
but
Rojas,
the point that Gallagher brought up yesterday, Dave Gallagher, 9-year Major League Baseball veteran, brought up is the fact that Rojas is stealing bases too. So while Castellanos has like 9 homers, Rojas does have 14 stolen bases, which is the same amount that he had last year in 59 games. He now has 14 stolen bases in 56 games this year. So he's on pace to steal, about 30, 40 bags this year.
Which would be is an amazing asset you don't want to take out of the lineup.
No, so I think Rojas is safe. I wonder if Dahl is the guy. I mean, he struck out a couple times. I was telling you yesterday, you're trying to judge him off of 5 games. Yesterday, if you're having this conversation, he's hitting over 300. Well, today he's hitting 260.
He is.
So I think Dahl's the odd man out. We'll see. I don't know that.
My theory, Mike, is it comes down to, for you, Mike, if Rob Thompson and Dave Dombrowski call Mike Gill and say, Mike, for you, how do you assess our bench? Because we got all these lefties, but Dahl can play all the outfield positions, but Weston Wilson can play more than an outfield position, right? So Weston Wilson arguably has more versatility and is a right-handed bat. So in that case, do you keep Weston Wilson up here, or do you say, look, Dahl's at least given me 2 home runs at the big league level. I value his bat off the bench more than Weston Wilson's versatility.
It's a tough one because I have the versatility of Merrifield. Mm-hmm. Yet they don't seem to value the versatility of Merrifield. Maybe they will start. I don't know.
He did play third base,
played third last night. It was interesting. They gave Bohm the day off. I think Bohm probably needed a day off. Yeah. Castellanos still hasn't had a day off,
which is insane.
It's pretty funny. But yeah, I mean, Weston Wilson to me, yeah, his versatility, but where do I really need him? How do I get him into a game? I have Stott. I'm going to have Turner. I have Merrifield, and I have Sosa. Where am I really getting Weston Wilson into a game?
Right.
So I feel like Weston Wilson, but now 2 guys are going to have to go down if Turner comes back this weekend. So I would think it's Dahl and Wilson.
Right. If Turner's coming back as well this weekend, then it's going to be both of them. But if it's just Marsh, I'm saying, then who do you choose between those 2 guys?
Yeah, I think the first move is probably Dahl would be the first guy because I'm losing a left-handed. I'm bringing a left-handed bat in, so I lose a left-handed bat.
Like a swap.
Yeah. And then when Turner comes back, Wilson goes because I'm gaining an infielder. I'm losing. And Weston Wilson is, I don't even know what position he played. I know he played second the game in London. He looks like, realistically, I mean, he just looks like a positionless guy. I don't know what he kind of profiles as.
Well, in the minors, he's played second, third, first, and left field, right field. So he basically is wherever you need him, I guess. That's his position.
But I guess the other question is, when Turner and Marsh get activated, is it Dahl and Wilson, or is Christian Pache or Rojas even in that mix?
I don't think Rojas is in it at all. But if you want to have a conversation about Pache, I certainly think it's worth having just because of the fact that, I mean, the guy has been underwhelming.
Yeah, Pache is certainly, I mean, he just doesn't bring any offense. He's a defensive player, and they have a defensive player in center field.
Right.
Marsh is a solid defensive player, so you don't need to replace Marsh. I mean, if you were going to tell me, hey, I'm going to play Christian Pache in left and Marsh will move over to right field late in a game for Castellanos, I can maybe see that. Now, Castellanos, in that mode would probably have to be hitting at the bottom half of the order again. You can't have Christian Pache come into a game, he's hitting in the 2-hole, right, and then the game gets tied, and now you're in a big spot, and Pache's up. You know what I'm saying? So
yeah, it's not going to work.
Yeah, they have a couple of options here. There's a lot they can kind of dive into, and I would imagine they don't have to do anything tonight. We'll keep our eye on the lineup. Whenever that comes out, we'll bring it to you here on the Sports Bash Live, 97.3 ESPN, the 97.3 ESPN free mobile app, and streaming live on the X platform at 973 ESPN. Of course, use the hashtag SB Live, and you can find the video of the show there. I'm Mike Gill. Coming up, Sal Paolantonio today at 3 o'clock. He's got a new book out. We're going to talk about his book, and we'll get his thoughts on Eagles mini camps. There is something Eagles and football related I want to dive into with Sal and later on in the show. But coming up next, Mike McGarry from the Press of Atlantic City, pressofac.com, a preview of the weekend. Phillies down in Baltimore. How do they measure up with the O's? That's next. This is the Sports Bash on 97.3 ESPN and the free mobile app, powered by First Bank of Sea Isle City.
This podcast is sponsored by IQ Bar. Need an afternoon pick-me-up? How about a replenisher after a good workout? Or maybe some smooth, jitter-free energy. Try the IQ Bar Sampler Pack. Right now, get 20% off all IQ Bar products, plus free shipping. We've got plant protein bars for strength, mood-lifting hydration sticks, and brain-boosting coffee to keep you full and focused all day long. Meticulously formulated brain and body fuel in all our IQ Bar products. For all your daily needs, the Sampler Pack is the perfect place to start. Plus, everything's ultra clean, ultra functional, and ultra delicious. Refuel smarter, hydrate harder, caffeinate larger with IQ Bar.
Go to eatiqbar.com and enter code BAR20 to get 20% off all IQ Bar products plus free shipping. Again, go to eatiqbar.com and enter code BAR20.
With Mike Gill.
Keeping the fans entertained and happy.
On 97.3 ESPN and the 97.3 ESPN free mobile app.
2:28 Phils tonight. Ranger Suarez, 10-1, 181 ERA. Kyle Bradish goes for the Orioles. Good pitching matchups all weekend long at Camden Yards in Baltimore, where, of course, the Phillies and the Orioles will play in front of sellout crowds all Father's Day weekend. Happy Father's Day to all the dads out there. I'm Mike Gill. This is the Sports Bash Live on 97.3 ESPN, the 97.3 ESPN free mobile app powered by First Bank of Sea Isle City, and streaming live video on the X platform at 973 ESPN. Use the hashtag SB Live. Mike McGarry from the Press of Atlantic City. pressofac.com joins us now as the Phillies lose last night. Kind of a sluggish night again, Mike. I thought this would be what happened on Tuesday night, but they came out and looked pretty decent on Tuesday. But the last two nights, it looked like a team that maybe hit the wall a little bit here.
Yeah, a little bit, and not great starting pitching either night. Christopher Sanchez really didn't have any command, and Aaron Nola really had nothing last night, especially his curveball was up and over the plate, and the Red Sox able to take advantage. So it just goes to show you how key that starting pitching is when you don't have it in the game, and it's been rare this season that the Phillies haven't. It can really send you south for a night. So, but I would agree with you. I think they're experiencing a little bit of a, post-London hangover, that struck a day or two after we expected it to.
Yeah, now I got some interesting text messages here. Mike in EHT says, if Suarez doesn't look as good as his usual self tonight, he's going to start to think JT's more important to the pitching success than he ever imagined. Does that creep into your mind at all?
Yeah, it does a little bit, right? It's 3 games without JT. Now, Zach Wheeler looked great, Sanchez and Nola not so great. I'm going to have to need a bigger sample size before I come to that judgment. I think the fact that Nola might have been off for 8 days, 7-8 days in between starts, that might have thrown him a little bit last night more than not having JT there. So, yeah, it's something to keep an eye on, but I'm going to need a bigger sample size for that.
I agree there. Why do you think no Nola? Like, why not bump Walker out there?
Well, I I think they just want to try to keep people in turn, keep them going, keep them on rotation, basically. That's why, basically.
Yeah, I think, these pitchers are screwy, man, sometimes. 6 days for Wheeler, 8 days for Nola. It almost feels like, hey, you know what? I know it was tough to navigate with all the days off that they had in there. Someone was going to be the guy. But I certainly don't want Wheeler and Nola to be the guys that are off schedule. That's all. I mean, it feels like, you know what? If Walker's off schedule, not a big deal.
Yeah, I would agree, and I think they did their best to keep Wheeler. I think he had 6 days rest. He's a guy who's been adamant that he wants to go every 5th day. He's made no bones about it. With the way the schedule fell, guys were going to be bumped back, and I think they tried to keep Wheeler as close to his normal rest as possible, and that's just the way it kind of fell.
All right, Mike McGarry from the Press of Atlantic City, pressofac.com. Orioles, 3-game homestand down there in Baltimore this weekend. The Orioles are one of the best teams in baseball. Obviously the Phillies have been criticized a little bit because of the schedule and all that stuff, but is this a meaningful June game for you, even though it's an interleague game?
Yeah, I think it's interesting, right? I mean, if you came to me today on June 14th, and we all know baseball is unpredictable. Arizona Diamondbacks last year, Phillies themselves in 2022. But if you said, Mike, who can win the World Series on today, June 14th, I'd give you 6 teams. I'd give you the Cleveland Guardians, the Baltimore Orioles, and the New York Yankees in the American League. And I'd give you the Phillies, the Dodgers, and the Milwaukee Brewers in the National League. And any time those 3 teams meet or those 6 teams play each other, like you had last weekend with the Yankees and Dodgers, to me it's a measuring stick. How do these teams measure against each other? What's the inch difference that one team might have over another? Where do you have to go and maybe improve your club at the trade deadline? So yeah, to me, will this have a big impact on the standings or the Phillies getting to the postseason? Probably not. But to me, this is going to tell you kind of where you are, through mid-June.
Mike, you got Marsh possibly back this weekend, right? And Turner possibly back this weekend. So keep that in mind, Phillies fans. No Real Muto, no Turner, no Marsh, on top of the fact that you might have had a little jet lag playing in Boston. But any strong feelings, strong feelings. I mean, we're talking about the 25th and 26th guy, but does Dahl stay? He go? Weston Wilson? Is it Pache? Is it Rojas? How do you think this roster has a little change with these 2 guys coming back?
Well, I think it's very interesting that Brandon Marsh is going to play center field tonight, right? That's what the reports are in his 2nd game of his minor league rehab. And Dahl and Pache do not have any options that you cannot send them down without losing them. And Dahl has been, he's been impressive in the time he's had up here. So I think what might happen, and again, no reporting, but just sort of reading the tea leaves, I think when Brandon Marsh comes back, Johan Rojas might be the guy that goes down to AAA and Dahl stays up here. Rojas hasn't really hit the ball. We've all said that's okay. But he hasn't been lights out in center field either. He hasn't been as good in center field this year as he was last year. So I think you might see Brandon Marsh in center field when he comes back and Rojas goes to AAA. I don't think they want to lose Dahl. I think they want to see more of him. So I think that's the way that roster situation will kind of play out in the next day or so.
All right, now that's an interesting one because we've kind of talked about Rojas. He's hitting like 233. You talked about his defense, though, and it hasn't been this outstanding level of defense that we saw from him last year. Now, you say that might be, and I know you're saying, hey, no reporting here, which I'm not putting, but do you think that's the realistic thing based on that Marsh is playing center, or could Pache be the guy they're done with?
Yeah, I don't think they want to lose Pache or Dahl either, and both those guys are out of options. So if you send them to the major leagues, you got to kind of send them through waivers, and they're going to get claimed. So you're going to lose those guys. So I don't think at this point in the season, they want to lose either of those guys. Like we said, Rojas, he's not hitting the ball with a lot of pop, a lot of singles, and the defense hasn't been the lights-out defense that it was last year where you can say to yourself, okay, this guy's going to hit a weak 220, but he catches everything in center field. That hasn't been the case. Marsh is playing center field tonight in his rehab assignment. I'm just kind of putting 2 and 2 together here, sort of reading the overall picture. And what I see is them sort of maybe leaning towards sending Rojas down to the minor leagues to AAA to kind of work on things, maybe get himself right. And at the same time, they don't lose a player in Dahl or Pache. And if they were to, they can't send those guys down, so they would have to put them through waivers. And if they did, they would almost certainly get claimed. And I don't think they want to lose either one of those.
Yeah,
guys.
no, it's an interesting, reading of the tea leaves, if you will. There is, hey, Marsh, he is at a rehab assignment. He went last night. He was a DH, 3 for 5. Said he felt very confident. Tonight he's supposed to play center field. And Mike, you're saying because he's playing center, maybe that's a sign that the Phillies want him to go back to center when he's ready to go. Because you do have a big logjam out there. Weston Wilson, he's kind of here. I don't know what you want. I would imagine he's the other guy that goes down when Turner comes back, if Turner comes back this weekend. But then you have Dahl, Pache, Rojas, Merrifield, Marsh. I mean, you got all these bats in the outfield, and none of them really stand out.
Yeah, and Rojas is the guy. Sometimes it comes down to this, Mike, the guy with options, the guy you have the ability to send back to the minor leagues is the odd man out. And right now, he's that guy. He's the young guy with options that you can send him down to the minors. Because, like I said, if you send Pache down or you send Dahl down, they don't have. They're out of options, so You're going to lose them. And I think they want to lose the asset, basically. And Dahl's played pretty well. I mean, he's hit the ball pretty well. Let's see what he can do for a couple of weeks. And it's not going to hurt Rojas to go down to the minor leagues and work on some stuff and maybe come back in a month or two or a month, 4-6 weeks, a better hitter, a better player than he is right now.
I guess the only question I would have for you there is, do they view Marsh as an everyday center fielder, or is he still platooning with who? Pache? Does Merrifield play some center? You know what I'm saying? Like, is Marsh going to get that chance?
Well, good point. If you put Marsh out there against lefties, you can play Pache then at center field against lefties, right? You play Marsh against righties, and if you want Marsh to rest against a tough lefty, then you play Pache. So I think that's kind of where they might be headed right now. You know, we've all talked about, hey, can Brandon Marsh get some more at-bats against left-handers? Now, he hasn't helped us out in that argument because he's been terrible against left-handed pitchers
That's right.
so far this season. So he hasn't helped himself in that case, but he can play center field. We saw him play center field in 2022, and he can play against righties. And if you want somebody to play against lefties, you put Pache out there, and that keeps Dahl on the roster, and you send Rojas down to maybe work on some things, sharpen up his defense, and maybe he comes back in 4, 6, 8 weeks a better player than he is right now.
Mike McGarry from the Press of Atlantic City, pressofac.com. The weekend is here, and Josh tells me you are covering no events.
No events today. You know, you never know when I'll be in action again, but today, the last high school event was, Wednesday, the Meet of Champions, Little Carpenter Cup yesterday, but come on, Father's Day weekend, U.S. Open, Phillies, Baltimore. I'm going to be on my couch, okay? There you go.
You're not taking a ride down 95 to cover this big series? Come on, man.
I was thinking about it, but I got some things going on. My wife is retiring as a first-grade teacher this weekend from Westfield, New Jersey, so we have some ceremonial functions as we honor the retirement of the great Mrs. McGarry.
Do any of those ceremonial functions include a happy hour Friday pick for our listeners out there?
They might. I am a basic guy as you can be. I am not one of these guys. I am not an IPA. I'm not a microbrewery. I'm a play guy, Monday through Sunday, basically, and twice on Friday.
Well, open up an ice cold one for Mrs. McGarry and Mike McGarry from the Press of Atlantic City. Off this weekend. I like to hear it, Mike. He's always hustling around. He deserves Father's Day weekend off. Thank you, Mike.
All right. We'll see you guys down the road. Thanks.
All right. Mike McGarry, everybody from the Press of Atlantic City, pressofac.com here on the Sports Bash Live on 97.3 ESPN, the 97.3 ESPN free mobile app. I'm Mike Gill. What's up? We've got Sal Paolantonio in 20 minutes from now. Talk some Eagles with him, and his new book is out, How Football Explains America. Very Americana football. He'll explain it coming up in 20 minutes. Hey, listen, I got this deal that I told you about yesterday, but if you didn't jump on this deal, here's what you do. You go and get a written estimate for a new 2024 Acura from another Acura dealer, wherever you go. Bring that written estimate over to my friend Rocco at Key Acura of Atlantic City, and automatically he'll beat that price by $500 and give you an additional $500 on your trade. That's it. Pretty sweet. Now through June 30th, you get a 36-month lease on a 2024 Integra for just $299 a month with $49.95 down. Simple, easy, no tax tags, fees, nothing. That's the number. Key Acura, Tilton Road, EHT, your small but friendly dealer. See dealer for details. Sal Powell in 20 minutes. Stick around. More Sports Bash on 97.3 ESPN.
The Sports Bash with Mike Gill on 97.3 ESPN and the free mobile app.
All right, 246, Sports Bash, 97.3 ESPN, the 97.3 ESPN free mobile app, streaming live on the X platform at 97.3 ESPN. Use the hashtag SB Live. It's a happy hour Friday, everybody. I got a lot of happy hour Friday picks, but I don't know where you can get them around here. A lot of them were very delicious in London. Had a good time over there. So they have a place over there called the Bermondsey. I found out that we were saying it wrong. We would say Bermondsey, and they say it's Bermondsey.
Bermondsey. Okay.
So the place called the Bermondsey Beer Mile. It is like 17 craft beer breweries, that have different craft beers, and they're all in the arches of a train, under the train tracks.
So you're just going basically through where the train tracks go right over top.
Yeah, so like the train runs right over top of you. And in the arches, they built these breweries.
That's
and they're
fun.
they're all like right next door to each other. Like one's here, the next one's next door to it. I mean, you can literally go back and forth.
Nice.
So we spent the day on Saturday, like checking as many out as we could. That's the day we walked down the street looking for the Phillies game, and they had a cricket game on.
Yep.
None of these,
I can see that.
None of these breweries had televisions. There was like a bar across the street.
Oh.
So you went over to the bar, and they had TVs in the bar.
This is where America's better than England, then, because our breweries here have TVs in them.
Not all of them. I know the Sea doesn't have a TV.
Okay, well, most of the breweries I go to have TVs in them.
But yeah, I mean, I kind of like not having a TV. Everybody's talking, everybody's hanging out. You know, it's the one thing that, did you read my article at 973ESPN.com? The one thing that Bryce Harper appreciated the most was that nobody is on their phones. Like, everybody was out drinking a couple beers, talking to people.
Yeah.
And it's a refreshing thing.
It is refreshing. I can see that. It brings you back to the good old days before we had these things in our hands.
Yeah. I don't know if you saw this article. I thought I sent it over to the text board. Did I? Yes, there it is. 33rd team ranked the top 10 NFL rosters entering this season. So this is the second type of this article that we've come across.
All right. I know Pro Football Focus did one too, right?
Pro Football Focus did one and ranked the Eagles number 3.
Right.
It was, what, Kansas City 1 and San Francisco 2?
I think it might have been San Francisco 1 and Kansas City 2. I double check. But I know those were the two ahead of the Eagles, yeah.
And then the Eagles were 3.
Correct.
33rd team, which is a publication made up of like former
people who worked in the NFL.
Yeah, like former executives, former GMs, former coaches, former players.
Yep.
They created this website, the 33rd team. There's 32 NFL teams. This is the 33rd team. Top 10 NFL rosters entering 2024. All right?
Top 10.
Top 10. Here we go. Number 10. You're going to be surprised at this.
I'm probably going to throw something through the wall then. If you're saying I'm going to be surprised.
It's not worth throwing something through the wall, but it's definitely something.
Well, I am what I am, so.
The Rams.
Yep, don't like it.
I know you don't. I said I like the Rams. You don't.
I think the Donald loss is huge.
Yep. Number 9. Green Bay.
That makes sense. They added to the team. I would probably put them maybe a little higher. I mean, they added to the team this year, this offseason. I think they're building a nice, good, competitive contender up there.
Number 8, Baltimore.
Probably about right. I mean, adding Derrick Henry doesn't fix all their problems.
Number 7. DeCecco liked this team a lot yesterday during our AFC East preview. Miami's
going to be
He picked the Dolphins to win the East.
Yeah, the Dolphins are going to be interesting because they did lose some guys on defense. So I'm curious to see how they offset those losses like Christian Wilkins.
Yeah, Jordan Brooks, Kendall Fuller, what's his name from Buffalo? Jordan Poyer. Number 6, the Jets. I asked DeCecco yesterday, is this a Super Bowl roster? He said, yeah.
They are. I mean, if Aaron Rodgers is healthy, then that is a Super Bowl team.
I thought that last year. He got hurt. Their quarterback play was so bad that they weren't even a playoff team.
They were the worst quarterback play in the league.
Top 5. Number 5. Detroit.
Makes sense. I mean, they're bringing back most of their team, and they have continuity at the coordinator position.
Okay. You surprised by anything other than the Rams so far?
Rams are really the only surprise. I mean, you can make an argument that maybe the Packers should be higher.
Number 4. Kansas City.
Feels a little low. I think Kansas City might have a better roster coming into next year than last year.
I agree. I think they made great moves in the offseason, and I'm trying to think, is there something they lost that stands out that you're like, I mean, Sneed, they did lose L'Jarius Sneed, but
that's one guy.
Yeah. And I think they added to the offense. Their offense was their problem a lot last year.
Yeah, their offense had almost no playmakers.
Number 3, Cleveland.
Wow. That is higher than I expected.
Remember, the Eagles play Cleveland this year.
They do. Now, I guess part of the assumption is because they had 12 guys injured last year that if those guys are healthy this year.
Yeah, well, I mean, they added Jerry Jeudy. We'll see what happens there. Nick Chubb, is he back? The quarterback's the big question there. They had a good roster. They went to the playoffs with Joe Flacco, for God's sake.
They did.
And Joe, if you're listening down in Avalon or Stone Harbor, where's he hang out?
Avalon.
If you're down there listening, God bless you, Joe. You took a team to the playoffs last year. He hangs around here in the summer, doesn't he?
Yeah, he does. He has a place down there.
So I haven't said Philadelphia.
No, you haven't.
Are they 2, 1, or out?
I'll say they're 2.
So you don't think they're out. You're not saying they're number 1. You're going to put them here.
I'm going to put them right here.
Philadelphia is number 2.
And it makes sense because the 49ers are probably number 1.
49ers are 1. But do we think, okay, people are evaluating the Eagles roster and saying, this publication saying they have the second best roster in the league. Pro Football Focus said they had the 3rd best. So inevitably, are they a top 3 team in the NFL? I'm going to ask Sal Paolantonio what he thinks. I know he reads the 33rd team. I know that he checks out the 33rd team. Those of you watching at 973 ESPN on Twitter X, use the hashtag SB Live. Sal Powell will be on the live video. You'll be able to watch that conversation over there. And, of course, you can hit us up on the text board at 609-403-0973. The 33rd team ranks the Eagles roster as the number 2 roster in the NFL. What do you guys think? Hit us up. Sal Paolantonio from ESPN is coming up next.
Jersey. This is the Sports Bash with Mike Gill on 97.3 ESPN and the 97.3 ESPN free mobile app. Now live from inside the Ocean Casino Resort Studio, here's Mike Gill.
3 o'clock, Sports Bash, live, 97.3 ESPN, the 97.3 ESPN free mobile app. I'm Mike Gill. What's up, everybody? It is a holiday weekend for all the dads out there. Happy Father's Day to all the fathers as we get you ready for a Father's Day weekend on a happy hour Friday. It is a Sal Pal Friday as well, as he joins us now on the Sports Bash Live on 97.3 ESPN, the 97.3 ESPN free mobile app, and streaming live video on the X platform at 973 ESPN. Use the hashtag SBLive. Sal Paolantonio, it's good to see you, man. Happy Father's Day weekend to you. And I know it's a little quiet time in the NFL, but we got a lot going on. The Eagles just finished up, and we got this new book from Sal Pal we're going to discuss in just a couple of moments here. How are you, man?
I'm doing pretty good, Mike. Good to see you. Good to talk to you. I'm glad you're back safe and okay from London. That was a great little 2-game series the Phillies had in London. Didn't end well, but I watched every inning. I thought it was fascinating. I really did. I loved it. And, minicamp, Mike, for the Philadelphia Eagles, the first full mandatory minicamp of the Nick Sirianni era was very interesting. There were a lot of intriguing little storylines that went on and a lot of interesting things that will carry over into training camp. I think the most important thing was the new look of the defense. And the presence of some veterans at all 3 levels of this defense. You had to remake that defense, and you could just tell that C.J. Gardner-Johnson, Devin White, Bryce Huff, they all had a presence on this defense, along with the unseen hand of Vic Fangio. I was fascinated by how that was all getting itself together rather quickly.
I want to talk more about the mini camps in just a second, but I know you read 33rd Team, and I don't know if you came across this article either yesterday or today, but it came across. They ranked the rosters in the NFL. Philadelphia, number 2. Are we overlooking this team and this roster? It feels like people don't know what to think about this Eagles team. I was pretty surprised. Pro Football Focus had them number 3, 33rd Team number 2. Is this Eagles team better than everybody is kind of giving them credit for?
Oh, I saw that, Michael. And I think that their roster definitely is in the top 3. There's no question about it. They have firepower on offense. They have a good mix of young and old on defense. The addition of Saquon Barkley, I realize, he's got over 2,000 carries. He's 27 years old. He's already had a major knee injury, major knee surgery that he's had to come back from. But the Eagles invested $37 million in this guy, and he is going to be, I think, a very important part of Kellen Moore's offense, both in the running game and in the passing game. That was very evident during minicamp practice. Just his presence on the field, I think, will be significant. So I think their roster is in the top 3 of the National Football League, despite losing Jason Kelce, who led the offensive line in snaps last year, despite losing Fletcher Cox, both to retirement. Cox was on the field 54% of the defensive snaps last year. They're going to miss both of those players, and young players will have to take their place and do a lot of work in order to live up to what they did last year. But I do agree with them, both Pro Football Focus and 33rd Team, that the Eagles have a top 3 roster.
Yeah, I feel like every time I see these things, and, this time they were 2, ahead of Kansas City, I'm thinking, man, are the Eagles better than everybody's giving them credit for? Because it feels like people are skeptical. They don't know what to think. And you talked about it, the coordinators, Vic Fangio, and how much that will impact the changes on this defense. You talked about Chauncey Gardner-Johnson, Sal. That corner room, if you went to training camp and just watched the battle at corner, you're going to see a party over there. That's going to be an interesting battle with the 2 rookies. What do they do with James Bradbury? And then that group of the other guys, Isaiah Rodgers and Josh Jobe and obviously Eli Ricks and Kaylee Ringo. They got a lot of guys that are very intriguing.
They do, and they're all pushing one another. That's pretty clear. The rookie Mitchell is making a big jump. I'm interested to see how that plays out. Isaiah Rodgers is going to get a run for his money. But listen, last year in 2023, there were 4 cornerbacks picked in the first round. All 4 of them started for their respective teams. If Mitchell does not start for the Eagles at corner, then that, to me, would be a major setback for this team.
Same feeling on Cooper DeJean. Does he have to be a starting player or a big factor, or is that a disappointment if he's not?
I'm interested to see where they're going to play him. You know, he was drafted as a corner. He's listed on the depth chart as a backup in the slot. So, could he see time at safety? Perhaps. He could do a lot of different things. He's obviously got return skills. But, he is going to be in the mix. But both of these guys, Cooper DeJean and Quinyon Mitchell, are going to push for starting jobs. And, competition is good, especially in training camp. And, Mike, so is depth. It's a 17-game season. I mean, that's why you have groups like 33rd Team and Pro Football Focus looking at the entire roster, right? You might say, well, Patrick Mahomes gives the Chiefs a much better roster just because of his presence over Jalen Hurts. I mean, just that factor alone. But you have to take the whole 53-man and figure in how it's going to be through a 17-game season. A lot of time between now and then.
No doubt. Obviously, the linebacker is always a question with this team. Devin White, Nakobe Dean. We'll see how that all plays out there. That defensive line rotation, who takes the snaps for Fletcher Cox. How about Becton playing guard? Does that intrigue you at all?
Oh, it does. Becton's a former first-round pick, for sure. Moving him to guard, he was a tackle, is going to be interesting. Listen, they got to find the right combination. They have the best offensive line coach in the league. But more important, Mike, to me, is, I wrote 3 notes down on Kellen Moore's offense that what I saw at mandatory minicamp and what I'm looking for in training camp. Number 1 was motion and shifts to create favorable matchups. Last year, the Eagles were near the bottom in the league in motion, pre-snap motion, and shifts. And as a result, they presented a very vanilla picture to defenses. And, they had no real, I thought, snap, crackle, pop for Jalen Hurts. The second thing is the blitz beaters. You don't see that very much in minicamp, but you'll see it certainly during training camp. And the blitz is what really crushed the Eagles offense down the stretch. They really had no answer, which is kind of shocking that a team at that level would have no answer week in and week out. But number 3 was who calls the protection on offense. How does it get called? Who calls it? Because Jason Kelce was among the best, really, in my view, ever to do it in an Eagles uniform. His ability to see and recognize what the defense was presenting and call a protection for Jalen Hurts, despite the fact that they had problems with blitz beaters last year, he was still in charge of that. Now you put Cam Jurgens in there. You have to have Jalen Hurts into the mix. Stoutland, Kellen Moore, all of this has got to be built in to protect the quarterback, so they have answers to where the blitz is coming, whether it's overload, whether it is guys backing out into coverage. It's going to be fast. To me, that's it's not sexy, Mike. It's not sexy, but boy, is it important.
It's something, I think Wink Martindale was on a podcast the other day. My producer was telling me, he talked about how difficult it was as a coordinator to game plan because of Kelce and how good he was and all of the things you just mentioned, how he picked up the blitz and pointed it out, and that made his job as the coordinator that much more difficult. How does Jurgens take over that role? I talk about that as it's almost like something that we're almost like taking for granted, that one guy's gone, the next guy's going to step in and just do the same thing. Probably not.
Well, you would hope. He certainly got the training for it. And Kelce's going to be in the building helping him. You got the best offensive line coach in Jeff Stoutland, so he's not going to have, for lack of training and coaching, but you still got to go out there and do it. Again, it's not sexy, but I have it in my top 3 as the most important things to look at with the offense. Number 4 would be Saquon Barkley. I'm very interested to see on first and second down how they're going to utilize him in the running game, what it's going to look like. Is it going to be RPO? Is it going to be quick hitters? Is it going to be, misdirection kind of stuff? Is it going to be stuff that involves Jalen Hurts off the edge? I'm fascinated to see. They're not going to reveal that, Mike, too much until they go to Brazil.
Do you anticipate Barkley being a bigger part of the pass game?
He'll be a 3-down back. That's what he was brought here for. You don't pay him $37 million to be there off the field on third down, Mike. He's going to be a 3-down back. But, again, timing on those wheel routes, on those quick hitters on the edge. Jalen Hurts has got to get that timing with Saquon Barkley. The ball's kind of come out quickly, and they definitely have to work on that. That'll be an important, integral part of what Kellen Moore. 2021, when Kellen Moore was the offensive coordinator of the Cowboys led the NFL in points per game, points scored per game, and Dak Prescott had his best season as a pro. So. Kellen Moore's got a lot of experience. He's only 35, but he's got 5 years running an offense at the NFL level. And Kellen Moore, let's be frank about it. You got Zach Taylor in Cincinnati, Sean McVay in L.A. You've got young coordinators who have become head coaches at the, and Kellen Moore, this is a time where he's got to, make his bones so that he can become a head coach.
By the way, my producer found the audio from Wink. I want to play that for you. So you said it's not sexy, but this is what Wink Martindale said about why Kelce was so good compared to other centers around the league.
Kelce's a different animal. To me, he's a first ballot Hall of Famer. We've become friends over the years because he could see it. And he studies it. He works at it as a center. With most centers, it's not that way. You can move late, show things late where they can't see it after they've made their checks.
Just what we were talking about. He sees stuff ahead of time. You could show stuff late. Kelce still picks it up. And will that be something that Jurgens is able to do? Because he said not a lot of guys can do that.
Well, you're taking. I'm on the. I'm on the Hall of Fame enshrinement selection committee.
Is Wink right? Is Kelce a Hall of Famer?
I have one of the 46 votes, and I'll be in the room promoting Jason Kelce as a first ballot Hall of Famer. I agree. If you go on Sal Pal ESPN, my Instagram account, you will see I did a whole breakdown of why I think Jason Kelce is a first ballot Hall of Famer. I agree with Wink. So there's two things here, Michael. There's pre-snap. The center comes up to the line of scrimmage and sees where the defense is and what approach they look like they're going to take. And then there's post-snap. After the snap, the shifts by the linebackers and the safeties. Who is pulling back into coverage? And luckily, they will be practicing against a Vic Fangio defense all summer, because what I saw was Fangio dropping linebackers, dropping White, dropping Jeremiah Trotter Jr., dropping Bryce Huff into coverage all the time. So that's something that will definitely be useful for Cam Jurgens to gain some experience.
Sal Pal, of course, the book is in my hand here for the people watching. And by the way, the viewership has shot up by about 50% since you have jumped on here. So everybody saw Sal Pal, and now they're jumping on. And here's the book, How Football Explains America, How Football Became Our National Pastime. And the book is out. When I got back from London, it was sitting right here for me. I had a good London trip, but a slice of Americana when I came home.
Yeah, that's nice, Mike. Thank you so much for promoting it. That's a brand new edition of that book that my publisher, Triumph Books, has put out. When I get to Ocean City this summer, make sure you bring your copy. And at Uncle Bill's, I will sign it for you.
Hey, by the way, did you see what Jason Kelce said about Uncle Bill's?
I've seen Jason Kelsey at Uncle Bill's many, many times. He loves Uncle Bill's.
He said on the podcast, the best pancakes in the land.
Well, there's no question. I mean, notwithstanding Mrs. Palantonio, you understand that. She's listening in the other room. But she loves it, too. And I love, going to Ocean City and, either on Asbury Avenue or, down on 40th Street to one of those. So we've had breakfast there with Johnny G, the grinder team at Berger Realty. So I'm looking forward to bringing Johnny G a copy of this book. And you can get it at the Ocean City bookstore downtown. They've got copies of it, but Amazon.com has it for sure. Hopefully I'll do a signing in Ocean City this summer. But thank you for promoting the book. It's done, gangbusters, and it's a brand new edition of this book. You can get it on Amazon.com.
Now, do you have a favorite chapter? Is there one that kind of stands out to you in the book that you said that was my favorite one to kind of work on?
It really was the chapter that's called How Football Explains the 60s, because, that's when I grew up as a football fan. My dad was a big Green Bay Packer fan. Why? Because of Vince Lombardi. And we followed Bart Starr and the Packers during those championship years. And then Joe Namath showed up, and Namath became the siren song of a generation. And, it was the Packers and the Jets. And, that to me is when football really embraced the culture on television and became our national pastime and kind of usurped baseball. You know me, Mike. I'm like you. I love baseball. I'll watch baseball all day and all night. I love it. But, in terms of the ratings, you can't beat the National Football League. And we're looking forward to going to Brazil, Michael, and I'll be on your show from Brazil on Friday, the day of the game on week 1.
It's an amazing trip that they're, I was in London for baseball. The people over there, they had no idea what was going on, but they loved it. We'll see what happens in Brazil. That should be an interesting dynamic over there as well. Sal Palantonio, the book is called How Football Explains America. There's also a chapter about how football explains show business. And, man, it has really become a show of shows. And one of the showmans is your buddy Merrill Reese over there. Did you push for him to get into
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Merrill Reese is going to be in the Hall of Fame this summer, the 2024 Pete Rozelle Award winner, which is the broadcast wing of the Pro Football Hall of Fame in Canton, Ohio. It's great. Every year we put somebody in now that's associated with the Philadelphia Eagles. It's a grand tradition that we've started.
Yeah, well, listen, they got a bunch of players who have been deserving in the recent past here. And this roster here, we said, the number 2 roster in the league, as the 33rd team says there. The last thing, I guess, would be anything. Everybody seems to be in a big hullabaloo about Hurts's lack of support for Sirianni. Anything there in your mind?
Well, Michael, I think he was inartful in his comments about Sirianni. That's pretty clear. He probably would love to take that back and be a little bit more supportive. Maybe he was just trying to be truthful. I think the bottom line is what people need to understand is this is Kellen Moore's offense. As Jalen Hurts said, we're changing 95% of the offense. And when you do that, you have to have total control and not much ancillary input. I use that word ancillary, but it is the head coach. And the head coach is going to be involved in game planning. Obviously, he has to be. But the bottom line is it's got to come from Stoutland, who's the run game coordinator, Kellen Moore, who's going to be the overall coordinator of the offense and calling the plays, and then Jalen himself. And Sirianni's going to have to be part of that. There's going to be a lot of cooks in the room to try to figure this thing out. Mike, I got to tell you, it's about the most complicated way you could possibly go about it. For a team that has the second best roster or the third best, however you want to calculate it, for a team that, I have headed towards the NFC Championship game, for a team that, it's Super Bowl or bust. It's going to be a complicated summer for this group.
A lot to learn. What did Jalen Hurts say? 95% of the offense is brand new, and he's trying to master it. He's trying to make it his own, and he's wrapped into all that because it's another new offense for Jalen Hurts. It's like 7 and 8 years or something like that that he has had to learn a new offense. Once again, Sal Paolantonio, national correspondent, ESPN. The book is called How Football Explains America. It's a great beach prop for you there. You bring it down to the beach, you read a couple pages, you jump in the water, you come back and dive right back into the book all summer long. And, man, you said it. Training camp's going to be here before we know. When do they start? Like late July?
Yeah. Yep.
Can't wait.
Yep. Can't wait, Mike. And you have a great summer. I'll see you down in Ocean City. Thanks for all your promotion of the new book. And thanks for having me on the show. I really, really appreciate it.
All right. Thanks, Sal. Appreciate it, man. We'll talk to you soon. Sal Paolantonio, everybody, here on the Sports Bash Live on 97.3 ESPN, the 97.3 ESPN free mobile app. And if you're watching the show on the X platform at 973 ESPN, use the hashtag SB Live. Sal Paolantonio. The one thing that he mentioned about the offense this is Kellen Moore's offense now. It's not Nick Sirianni's offense. I think this Nick Sirianni, and I got a lot on this. We had this discussion the other day. Is Nick Sirianni okay with giving up his offense? Or is he forced into it? Or there's so much you can kind of unwrap here. But we will do so coming up. Football at 4 with Adam Kaplan today, so stick around. We'll take a look at what Adam saw from the defensive perspective at minicamps. We did offense with Adam on Tuesday. Now he's going to get his insider notes on the defensive perspective coming up at 4 o'clock today for today's Football at 4. But when we come back, Bob Wankel's here. We're going to talk a little Phils tonight. Big weekend down there in Baltimore. Charm City, baby. By the way, it's Happy Hour Friday. A couple people texting in. Now, people asking me for places to go in Baltimore. Paul from Rehoboth Beach says he's heading to Camden Yards to watch the Phils for the first time. Hearing there are a lot of Philly fans making a trip. I would imagine so. Any suggestions for establishments to visit before first pitch? If you're going to Baltimore, Paul and everybody else, if you're going to Baltimore, get there early enough. Do yourself a favor. Go to Max's Tap House in Fells Point. About 7 to 8 minutes from the stadium. You don't have to, and you can take the boat taxi. You can park your car by the stadium, get on the boat taxi to Fells Point, go to Max's Tap House, jump on. Now, you don't have to do the boat taxi if you just want to be a little touristy. But Uber ride from Max's Tap House back to Camden Yards, 5 to 7 minutes. Easy. Max's Tap House, if you want to get really there early and you want to do it right up the road from Max, it's about 5 minutes down the road. A place called Ministry of Brewing. It's an old church that they turned into a brewery. Ministry of Brewing. The beer is called the Wispy. Now that's a Happy Hour Friday for you right there. Max's Tap House has like 280 beers on tap. Ministry of Brewing makes their own beer. It's in an old church. Pretty cool. Nice little setup in there. So there's a couple thoughts for you. I'll give some others. Anybody going to Baltimore that needs a little recommendation, you just ask Charm City, the mayor of Charm City right here.
The head of tourism.
That's right. The head of tourism for Charm City, Baltimore. Bob Wankel, RedOctoberPhilly.com, Crossing Broad, talks a little Phillies and Orioles. Coming up next here on the Sports Bash Live on 97.3 ESPN, the 97.3 ESPN free mobile app, and streaming live on the X platform at 973 ESPN. Use the hashtag SBLive.
You're listening to The Sports with Mike Gill.
When I'm driving, I got a guy on the radio who talks to me. I can't see him, but he talks to me.
On 97.3 ESPN.
All right, welcome back. So a lot of Philly fans in the audience are going to the game. They're asking me for places to go. I'll give you plenty, all right? So I gave you Max's Tap House, which is the premier spot in Fells Point. I told you the Ministry of Brewing. It's an old church that they turned into a brewery. But if you are near the stadium, you're going to Pickles Pub. That's where you go. but be careful. That's what I would tell you. Be careful on that end of town. It's not the safest end, but Pickles Pub. Somebody sent me a picture of their hotel room. They can see into the stadium. It's going to be crazy down there, Bob Wankel from Red October Philly, crossing Broad. Man, Philly fans and Baltimore fans, two teams at the precipice of first place. I know the Yankees are in first place, but this Orioles team, it's going to be an atmosphere.
Can I just say I'm always impressed by you. You're like the human version of TripAdvisor. You're a very well-traveled man, Mike.
Well, Baltimore is pretty close. I mean, It's not like I'm going to Wyoming here.
Yeah. Oh, look, this is a good series here, and it's a good test for the Phillies, who've had a little bit of a rough week. This is my World Series prediction at the start of the season: Orioles-Phillies. So. Yep. It's on track right now. I know the Yankees are a little bit in the way at the moment, but this is going to be a good test. And the Phillies are going to see three pretty good arms in Bradish, Rodriguez, and Burns, too.
Yeah, well, the whole weekend's got good pitching matchups. What do you make of the way the Phillies handled the pitching? 8 days off for Nola, and in hindsight, should they have maybe used Nola instead of Walker in London? A lot of people say, why'd they even go to London, the guys who didn't pitch? I mean, do you look at that and just say, come on, nonsense?
Yeah, a little bit. Like I get the question.
If they're not up 9 games, are we talking more about that?
Maybe you're giving them a little bit of the benefit of the doubt. But look, I mean, it's a long season. It's an honor to be selected for these London games. Are you going to tell? Like, if you asked Aaron Nola, hey, do you want to go over there? Or he probably said, yeah. So you just go to him and be like, look, we're going to not let you contribute or participate in this 4-day trip to London that everybody is focused on. That's kind of weird, I think. So I understand it. If this were a playoff series, they probably wouldn't have sent them. But I think in the middle of June, it's okay, everyone. And I do think that the layoff probably contributed a little bit to what we've seen this week with Christopher Sanchez and Aaron Nola. I mean, Aaron Nola was brutal last night, but what are we going to do? Get on here today and kill him after he just made 12 really borderline excellent starts consecutively? I can't do that. So I'm willing to write that off last night and just kind of turn the page.
Was he biting the bullet a little bit last night, taking one for the team? I mean, they left him out there a little. It was like, all right, but hey, you got to get us through 4. We went to the bullpen early the night before. Yeah. I feel like if that's a playoff game, he's getting the yank. I think they left him out there to kind of take one for the team a little bit.
Yeah, certainly, because Christopher Sanchez couldn't get through the 5th on Wednesday night. And so right. I think it's like, hey, you're fresh. We know you don't have it. The curveball was not there at all.
No.
That was the biggest problem. And I think it was just a matter of, hey, can you maybe grind out that 5th inning for us? And he couldn't. And, he couldn't even get out of the 4th. So it was a disappointing result. They get back into the game once it's 4-0. You think, okay, maybe not their night, but Kyle Schwarber clears the bases with the double. And you're thinking, all right, here we go. Now here's a chance for Aaron Nola to reset, bear down, keep him off the board. Maybe the Phillies steal one and win a series, but he just wasn't able to do it.
Bob Wankel, RedOctoberPhilly.com, and of course, Crossing Broad. Apparently he's a real estate agent now as well. Congratulations to you. Another job on the plate for Bob.
Yeah, jack of all trades. Man.
Yeah. See, I'm always, you tell me I'm about, I know all the different places to go, but you got like 75 jobs over there.
You got to pay the bills.
Marsh should be back tomorrow, you think?
It sounds like it. He'll play tonight, again. Yeah, go ahead.
No, I was saying, so if he's back tomorrow, he's playing center field tonight. Do you read into that at all on who might be the guy that goes out?
It's pretty interesting. I mean, he's playing center field. He's not playing left field.
Yep.
Is there a world where Brandon Marsh starts to play a little bit more center field for the Phillies? There might be. They have a decision to make here. Look, and I think there's a decent chance Trey Turner's back this weekend as well. He was out on the field about a half hour ago, running around, going through some drills and sprints, and there's not going to be a rehab assignment there. So there could be a world where Trey Turner's playing for the Phillies this weekend in Baltimore. That being said, the bigger decision, because that's just Weston Wilson, that's an easy one. You know what you're doing there. But with Marsh coming back, they have to make a decision. Do they want to keep David Dahl and Christian Pache? If so, when Brandon Marsh comes back, they're going to have to send Johan Rojas down. He's the only player of the 3 with options. Otherwise, they're going to have to be willing to part ways with Dahl or Pache, and those players are not going to clear waivers. Somebody will try to acquire them. So
how does that work? I get I'm just talking. You send Rojas down. Is it with the intention that he comes back up and regains that job? Like, is he taking one for the team here?
Yeah, it's just it's really hard, and I don't know which way they're going to go. But if you think through it, if Christian Pache's not here, if they decide, hey, we're going to keep Johan Rojas up here, and they end up, DFAing Christian Pache, like, is that going to prevent them from winning a World Series? Probably not in the grand scheme of things, but someone else gets hurt. Say Nick Castellanos gets hurt. Marsh goes down again. There's a re-aggravation there. Like, it's nice to have quality major league depth, and Christian Pache certainly is that. And then when I look at it, like, I know that Johan Rojas, like, beats a couple balls into the ground and runs down the line and gets on base sometimes, but, like, he's got 180 plate appearances this season. He has 6 extra base hits. So, like, I know he's hitting in the 230s, and everyone's like, well, that's kind of what you asked him to do. But when your OPS is sitting in the 500s, like, it kind of tells you how hollow those numbers are. I just don't think I'll say it like this. Here's a hot take for you. I don't think that Johan Rojas can be your primary center fielder on a World Series championship team. I don't.
And that's, I guess part of the thing is, Bob, his defense has not been super duper elite like you got last year, which was justifying why you kept him here. Because I don't think anybody thought when he came up that he was sticking. His defense was so good. And then he hit last year. I mean, he hit like 300. And it was like, wow, this guy's hitting and he's elite defensively. Now he's good defensively, maybe great, but not elite.
Yeah, I mean, if it were me, if I had to make the decision, I probably would send him down just to maintain that flexibility where you keep all of these guys in the fold, let things play out a little bit more and just see where it goes. But I wouldn't be surprised if they kept him up and just committed to it and said, hey, look, from an offensive standpoint, you've more or less done what we've expected you to do. We think you're going to play that premium defensive center field. That's how we're going to proceed. So I guess it's a cop-out on my end, but nothing would surprise me here, I guess.
Well, I guess the other question would be, like, do they value Dahl? I mean, he's a journeyman of some sorts. I know he hit a couple bombs. He was 0 for 4 with 2 strikeouts last night. He's another left-handed bat. Is that just a repetitive player? Is he Jake Cave?
I don't know. I really don't know. I think that he was good enough in the spring and good enough at Lehigh and has shown enough here now that this offense is a little bit inconsistent from time to time. And I do wonder if you start to see some tough righties, the idea of running Marsh and Dahl out there and left and center, that might give you a little bit more punch and a little bit more length in your lineup. But they may just determine and say, look, we're going to go back to what we did at the beginning of the year when Marsh was healthy. Whit Merrifield's starting to swing the bat a little bit better now. We're just going to go with, sort of what our configuration was when we broke spring training. Maybe they go that way. But I think Dahl's done enough to stick around and showed that he has some value.
Yeah, so you got another lefty bat, Pache. Marsh comes back. If Rojas goes out, is Marsh playing every day, or is now Pache in a center field platoon?
Yeah, I think it would sort of work itself out that way, where you're going to see Marsh more or less just play against righties. I think it's pretty clear at this point. I mean, they'll give him some opportunities like they have this season, but I don't see a world where he's going to get the bulk of starts against left-handed pitching. So they don't have that one true guy that they can just plan out there and say, all right, let's go play, 6 days a week. It's going to require some thought, matchup to matchup, about how they want to do it.
So is that then, if you send Rojas back, Marsh and Pache play center, is Merrifield and Dahl, is this the 93 Phillies with platoons all over the joint?
Sort of feels like it. I mean, if Merrifield can get going, and he has shown some signs of life here, I'm not ready to say he's all the way back, but if he could get going, I think that might be the ideal scenario for this team. And Nick Castellanos has showed some signs of life. Kyle Schwarber has hit, almost 300 now over his last 15 games. He's kind of heating up a little bit, maybe not so much with the power, but has been productive overall. The one thing with this lineup, like they've lost 3 of their last 4 games. I guess this is about as negative as we could possibly be all season, other than the first week. And I'm not really feeling that negative about these guys. I think the pitching is legit. I think the starting pitching is legit. The bullpen's legit. The one guy I have a question about is Alec Bohm. We talked about, look at Alec Bohm. He's taking the next step. Look at what he's done this season. Well, guess what? Over the last 35 games since May 1st, he's hitting .221 with a .601 OPS. He's got 2 home runs in his last 38 games, and he's your primary protector of Bryce Harper. His OPS has fallen from over 1,000 on May 1st down to under 800 as we talk right now. He has been terrible for this team for a month running now. They need him to be better.
Yeah, and it's going to be interesting because when Turner comes back, I guess he goes to the 2 spot, right? Castellanos, do they give him the shot to go to 4?
I mean, I wouldn't. I'm not there. Like, my thing is Alec Boehm can handle this. Like, he's a run producer, and he's not going to drive in runs at a historic rate like he was a month ago when we were talking about, like, wow, he's on pace for 165 runs batted in. But he's still on pace to drive in 124 runs. So I don't mind the idea right now of letting Alec Boehm try to figure this out. It's not saying that Alec Boehm, and make sure if you clip this to social media that you include this, but it's not to say that Alec Boehm can't be your cleanup hitter, but they need more from him. If he's going to be this guy that we've seen for the last five weeks or so, then he can't be. He's got to be better.
I think Hayden's listening back there as he's cutting up social media today. Bob Wankel, RedOctoberPhilly.com, Crossing Broad here on the Sports Badge. Yeah, I agree. Like, listen, I'm a Boehm guy. He has struggled mightily. The power has been completely gone. And they got to figure out, are you surprised when Dombrowski didn't seem all that concerned with Real Muto about a month or so? I'm like, whoa, that seems a catcher knee surgery. He's going to be back catching it in a month or so. I mean, that seemed like an aggressive timetable.
A little bit. I like the way that the Phillies handled it, though. I mean, if it ends up being another week or 2, then so be it. But it's kind of like, we're not going to panic. This is a veteran team. We know how to overcome some adversity. We've done it in the past with Bryce being out for extended periods of time. They thrived without Trey Turner here recently. It's nothing that this team is unfamiliar with. And so for Dombrowski to come out and basically say, look, it's fine. He'll be out a month or so. No big deal. It kind of has a calming factor where when you hear that news, you're like, oh my God, is this the thing that's going to derail this season? So I like that they kind of got out ahead of it. I like that they were transparent about the expectation. And, like I said, if it ends up being an extra 10 to 14 days, okay. But I think it's more about just setting a tone and kind of giving confidence.
Yeah, so because when they're at full strength, you wonder, does Real Muto go back to the 4 hole? That's where he started the season out. And then they had Stott hitting 4 yesterday, which I thought was, come on, that lineup yesterday was not ideal.
No, it's not ideal. And I mean, look, like we said, you get these guys back, you get Marsh and Turner back, and then all of a sudden your lineup looks a little bit different, even if you're starting Stubbs or Marchand, that's not great, but you won't have Bryson Stott hitting 4th for you either. It really is, it's just so important that Alec Boehm gets back on track. And is he going to be that guy that we saw in April again? Probably not, but they need more than a 531 OPS over his last 30 games. That's not going to get it done in the 4th spot.
All right, here you go tonight. The Phillies lineup is out. It's brought to you by Clark's Moving and Storage in Rio Grande. Moving's a breeze with Clark's Moving and Storage. Schwarber, Castellanos, Harper, Boehm, Stott, Sosa, Dahl, Pache, Marchand. So no Rojas tonight. Pache's in center. You got Dahl, Pache, and Marchand, a World Series team at 7, 8, 9.
Going up against the second best team in the American League that's playing really good baseball right now, by the way. They dominated the Rays last weekend and then just took 2 out of 3 against the Braves this week at home. So they're going to need a heck of a start from Ranger Suarez tonight. The pitching, like it has for really the last month, has carried them. They're going to need the pitching to carry them this weekend. I think that they would do well to get out of Baltimore with 1 win, to be blunt.
I agree. I said you got to just find a way to kind of get one here. I mean, look, the whole London thing, it took me I was okay by Wednesday. I got back Monday. Right. Monday. Tuesday, I had a rough day at the office. Wednesday, I was coming around. Wednesday.
Yeah. So. Yeah. We'll see what happens here, man. Look, and the one other thing I would just point out is, we're talking about all these platoons in the outfield. This is a conversation that we can kind of put on the back burner, but it's coming. What do you do come July, right? What do you do come the trade deadline? Because can you just platoon yourself through all of this? Or do you go out and get a guy that's not a fringe bat, but plant him in there, difference maker, maybe a guy that actually protects Harper where you don't have to just hope it goes well or hope that he hits a heater. Just, this is a dude, he's backing up Bryce. Let's go. Let's go win a championship. And I as each game passes, I see the standings. I know that there's not a ton of urgency here. They've built up a nice cushion. You want to go win this thing.
Yeah.
I think it's something you got to think long and hard about. If that player exists,
right?
And that's part of it.
Do you feel confident that you can win a World Series with Alec Boehm hitting 4, JT Realmuto 5, Nick Castellanos, or Stott, are those guys ready to be in those big moments? They haven't been the first 2 years. Have they made the leap to be ready in the third year?
Is that a rhetorical question?
You may answer on June 14th, and then we can strike it a month later.
Yeah, I mean, I think they need another bat. I think they need another difference-making bat. Not to say that those guys aren't big parts of this, but I think if you want to go win a World Series and say, like, we're here, we're going to come do it this year, I need a guy that can hit in the middle of that lineup that I know is going to have that consistent thump.
Bob Wankel, RedOctoberPhilly.com, and, of course, Crossing Broad. All weekend, the Phils in Baltimore. By the way, go to Isabella's and get a pizza down in Little Italy. There you go. We'll leave with that, Bob Wankel. Thanks, man.
All right, man. Talk soon.
All right, Bob Wankel, everybody from RedOctoberPhilly.com and Crossing Broad here on the Sports Bash Live on 97.3 ESPN, the 97.3 ESPN free mobile app, and streaming live on the X platform at 97.3 ESPN. A lot of show left, including football at 4 with Adam Kaplan in 12 minutes from now. Nick Earnshaw, Nicky's Nuggets are down in Baltimore today. The Nuggets will be live from Charm City. This hour brought to you by Broadlee's Plumbing, Heating, and Air Conditioning. Your trusted source for heating, plumbing, service, and installation for generations. 609-390-3907. Online at broadlees.net. Coming up, Adam Kaplan has football at 4 from the Inside the Birds podcast, and Nick's Nuggets at 4:30 today live from Baltimore. Back with more Sports Bash on 97.3 ESPN.
This is Mike Gill.
Do I have everybody's attention now?
On 97.3 ESPN and the 97.3 ESPN free mobile app.
Sports Bash Live, 97.3 ESPN, the 97.3 ESPN free mobile app. Hey, I got a deal for you. My guy Rocco said, listen, tell the listeners to bring a written estimate for a new 2024 Acura from another Acura dealer over to me at Key Acura of Atlantic City. He said, and I'll beat the price by $500 and give them an additional $500 on their trade. How about that? So go ahead, take the drive this weekend, go get an estimate, and then bring it in to Key Acura and say, hey, here's the estimate I got at so-and-so dealer. And he'll say $500 off that number right there. And I'll give you $500 off your trade. That is at Key Acura of Atlantic City, Tilton Road, EHT. And now through June 30th, so you got about half the month left. Get a 36-month lease on a 2024 Integra for just $299 a month with $49.95 down. Key Acura, Tilton Road, EHT, your small but friendly dealer. See dealer for details. It's Sports Bash Live, 97.3 ESPN, the 97.3 ESPN free mobile app. This week, get the $50 gift certificate for $25 to Jester's Dive Bar in Rio Grande. The deal is live now at seizethedeal.com. I've been to Jester's Dive Bar. It's a great menu, by the way. They got like the mac and cheese burgers and very it's overwhelming. There's a lot of great ribs, good stuff. Jester's Dive Bar. Get the $50 gift certificate for $25 now. But hurry, they might be sold out already. The deal went live today at 9 a.m. at seizethedeal.com. I'm Mike Gill. This is the Sports Bash. It's football at 4. It's coming up next.
97.3 ESPN presents the Sports Bash with Mike Gill. It's time for football at 4 with Adam Kaplan, powered by the Inside the Birds podcast.
I give my heart and soul to this franchise, as so many of us do.
Now live, this is football at 4.
Football at 4 is powered by the Inside the Birds podcast. It's brought to you by Bet365. Whatever the sport, whatever the moment, It's Never Ordinary at Bet365. Adam Kaplan from the Inside the Birds podcast. He's going to join us in just a couple of minutes. Before we get to Adam, we were talking to Sal Paolantonio in the 3 o'clock hour. Over at the 33rd team, they ranked the top 10 rosters in the NFL entering this season. Number 1, San Francisco. Number 2, Philadelphia. When I tell you guys that, I just kind of casually throw in there, people think the Eagles have the second best roster in football. Does that up your expectations for this season? Do you enter this season hearing that and say, you know what? The Eagles are going to be pretty good. I feel like we have such a bad taste in our mouth at the way the season ended. We were almost begging for it to end. You know, you never want the football season to end. You always yearn for more. But by the end of the year, you were just like, put me out of my misery. Get this thing over with. And let's see how they fix this problem. Did they fix the problem sufficiently enough for you? Well, one of the things that's interesting, I don't know if anybody saw this video that's on the internet. There's a video of the Washington GM, and he's talking to Howie Roseman, and Roseman's at the draft, and he's calling him, and he's going back and forth, and he keeps calling him back. And finally, the guy from Washington, the GM, I can't think of his name right now. Do you know his name off the top of your head?
Adam Peters.
Adam Peters, who looks like a nice guy, but he looks like he's just getting taken for a ride by Roseman. And at the end of the exchange, he says, man, you're a pain in the ass. You know, and it's like...
It's a scene from Draft Day in real life.
He just keeps on being relentless. He just won't give up. He asks for something. Then he asks again. And it's like, come on, man, I said no already. And the guy hangs up the phone, and Roseman calls back, and he just keeps on calling. And, you know, Michael Lombardi was talking, was this from,
the GM Shuffle podcast?
Okay, no, I didn't know if he was on McAfee or someplace else.
Oh, yeah, he goes to McAfee once a week, too.
But when you listen to his expository on the podcast, it just outlines more that Roseman just does it better. He details how the Eagles can pay Hurts and everybody else. He explains that the Eagles, you know, are just smarter than everybody else. Take a listen.
The Eagles, they did a really smart deal. The Eagles were smart about it. They went ahead and did Hurts' deal. He said 6.8% of the cap this year. Now, he's going to go up, but they can continue to sign their guys. It's a percentage of how much money you're giving them over the years of the contract. So that gives you room to kind of rebuild your team around it.
It's one of those things that I think you just take for granted because you are so fixated sometimes that the GM is the guy that picks the guys at the draft. And if he misses at the draft, you get angry and you say, I need a football guy. But the most important thing is what Lombardi just kind of mapped out, is he explains that they have so much more cap space than a team like the Giants. I think Lombardi said that like 20% of the Giants cap, think about that, like 20% of the Giants cap is taken up by Daniel Jones and Drew Lock. I mean, no wonder they're terrible. Adam Kaplan's here for Football at 4 on the Sports Bash Live 97.3 ESPN, the 97.3 ESPN free mobile app, and streaming live video on the X platform at 973 ESPN. Adam, happy hour Friday to you, sir. How are you?
I'm good, yeah. So, Mike, I just heard what you're talking about with the Giants. If you really look at the roster, it just tells you how poor it is. There are only really 5 well-paid players on the roster. Andrew Thomas, their left tackle, who missed a majority of the season due to a hamstring injury last season, so that crushed him. The aforementioned Daniel Jones, Bobby Okereke, their middle linebacker. He's a really good player, you know, making over $10 million a year. He deserves it. Dexter Lawrence, one of the best defensive tackles of the National Football League. He absolutely deserves it. And there are a couple guys, like John Runyon Jr. got paid really well to be their right guard, but they just don't have a very good roster. And it's, you can't just overpay guys. I mean, the reason why the Eagles doled out so many extensions is because these young guys deserved it.
Yeah, and one of the things we were talking about right before you came on, Adam, is, 33rd team. They had the Eagles roster ranked as the number 2 roster in the league. Now, that might be aggressive, but this comes off the heels that we talked about a couple of weeks ago. Pro Football Focus had them at number 3, and now are we not looking at the Eagles as a true should we be looking at them as not only a true Super Bowl contender, but maybe a favorite?
Well, Mike, maybe we'll do if we have time today, we'll get to what I want to talk about on just going to the Eagles defense, what the post OTAs outlook. But I'm going to do, this makes me think about bringing back my power rankings at InsideTheBirds.com, because when I do power rankings, I take everything into account: coaching, roster, performance, injury history. When you do that, you shouldn't just. I don't look at last year really. I mean, there's really no connection to it other than the guys who you were there last year are coming back. Some of them come back, not all of them. It's really what you look like right now, and also the schedule, by the way, in terms of how well they could do against the way these teams that on their roster, on their schedule look. But if you really go through 32 teams, the Eagles have a top 5 roster. I'd agree. I a little bit better now that you look at it, because I'm looking now at the Lions roster's got to be right up there. The Jets have maybe the best defensive roster. Offensively, they're not good enough. Eagles are way better offensively. Kansas City, they sort of overachieve with their roster. It's a good, not great roster. Obviously, they have an elite quarterback, best in the National Football League, one of the best in NFL history. But if you really go through it, I could see why you might have the Eagles top 5, where I have them somewhere around 5 if we're just evaluating rosters.
Right. Like, do you have Detroit ahead of them?
Boy, I would have to do a forensic examination. I'd really have to, because I'm looking at it right now. See, with the Kelsey retirement and the issues now at center and right guard for the Eagles, you might say as a 5-man unit, the Lions are better. The Eagles are clearly better at receiver, though the Lions are pretty interesting at receiver. The Eagles are clearly better. The secondary, I think it's now that the Eagles have added this talent. Now, again, we don't know how DeJean is going to be used yet, and Quinyon Mitchell certainly should start week 1, but he has never played in the National Football League before. There's some parts of the Eagles' defense is clearly better than Detroit. I think it's very close, by the way. It's too bad they're not on the schedule this year as they were a couple years ago.
They did have Cleveland at number 3 on that list, by the way.
I was thinking of them. It's funny you mentioned that. I was talking to someone with the Browns a couple weeks ago, and they were telling me about their offseason and how they feel like this is one of the best rosters they've put together in a long time. But a lot of it, Mike, comes down to the quarterback. Watson has not played good football since 2020. He's come off major right shoulder surgery for 2 issues. So you don't know that. Now, their offensive line's fantastic. They fortified the receiver core with the addition of Jerry Jeudy. Running back, they're questionable because of Nick Chubb had one of the worst knee injuries in NFL history. It's just terrible. Really good defense, well coached. It's right up there, Mike. If you want to have the Browns roster over the Eagles, I probably would not disagree with you. I think it's close. It's a good discussion. You've got me thinking now. I'm definitely going to, whatever we're talking about, whatever I'm thinking next, what I was thinking for Tuesday's segment, I'm scratching it. I'm going to do power rankings, no question.
Yeah, and by the way, the Eagles do play the Browns this year, so we'll get a chance to see how they stock up. Check out that full article. It's over at the 3013.com, ranking the top 10 NFL rosters. The Eagles, number 2. You mentioned.
Who wrote it? Do you know who wrote it?
I will go. Let me
I'll read it.
Scroll to the top real fast. Ian Valentino is the
yeah. He I think he used to work for Pro Football Network. I don't know if he's still there, but wow, that's interesting. Wow, that's fascinating.
He did a lot of scouting stuff.
Yeah, he's in the college strat. Yeah, that's interesting. I'll check that out.
All right, so we did the offense on Tuesday. Post OTAs, mini camps, all that stuff. Where does everything sit on the defensive side of the ball as we get to training camp in about a little over a month from now? The camps will be opening up. Where do you take us on the defensive line post mini camps?
Yeah, it's about 5 weeks, Mike, that the Eagles will report. And remember, the first 5 days of training camp is the ramp-up period, so it's not like it was when I first started covering the league with Jeff back in the early 2000s when they would go 2 days very early in the camp. None of that anymore. So, and this is as I get into kind of what the defensive line looks like, we didn't see a lot because the entire offseason for every NFL team, these were passing camps. There's really very little competition. A lot of individual drills for the defensive line, a lot of 7-on-7, a little bit of 9-on-7, and 5 minutes in every practice with 11-on-11s during the mandatory camp. Next to none during the regular OTAs. Mike, the OTAs in mandatory camp are virtually the same. The only difference is you add some 11-on-11 work. But what I look for is, okay, what kind of shape do these guys look and what do the body types look like? That's something I've got from personnel people for I should look at, and I did. Like, Jordan Davis looks really good for him. I mean, again, he's a giant human being. Of course, we thought he was in shape last year, and he got off to a great start, but that didn't last long. His conditioning was poor, and that's something we'll be looking for in the dog days of August, Mike, in mid to late August. I'm going to be looking at that. Is he huffing and puffing? Is he taking himself out? That's something I didn't really look much at that last summer, but that's definitely going to be on my radar. Now, I know some people are complaining about the Eagles' depth at defensive tackle. We at Inside the Birds have talked about it. It's also a good thing that they're going to take a lot of they just have a young defensive tackle roster. Milt Williams, Jordan Davis, and Jalen Carter. If they play the same front they have before, those guys are starters. Well, we know Jalen Carter has to start because there's nowhere else to go with Fletcher Cox retiring. Now you're going to take a look at Marlon Tuipulotu, who will be the first backup off the bench, and Moro Ojomo, who they like, who's got good length. And then my guy for training camp is Gabe Hall, who's going to be a 7 technique for them, or 5 technique. He's a fascinating player, Mike. He's a guy completely underachieved in college. He's got incredible measurables at 6'6". He's out of Baylor. He's got a lot of gifts. He would have been a 4th or 5th round pick had he just supplied himself, but he never really did. With Clint Hurt being the defensive line coach, I'll just repeat what I've said since they signed him. If Clint Hurt can't get this guy to make the roster, the guy clearly can't play in the National Football League. Clint Hurt is one of the best defensive line coaches in the league. He's now with the Eagles. But they're really light, Mike. Let's be honest now. They're super light on the defensive line. And it's something they're going to have to address at some point, but let's take a look at these kids. So if they do sign somebody, that guy will not be starting, but you want to have some insurance on the defensive line.
All right, Adam Kaplan, Football at 4. Let's look at the edge rushers because a big new name in there that we're hoping can provide a little bit more. Obviously, is Huff. You got Nolan Smith in there and an interesting group there.
Yeah, so, Mike, it's not a question of depth. It's a question of can these guys do it? Josh Sweat fell off completely. Very lucky to be an Eagle. The speculation it's one of the few times, Mike, that internet speculation turned out to be true. He was in trouble in terms of would he be on the team or not. He had to take a pay cut to come back. He did. But they fully guaranteed his salary this season of about $10 million. Bryce Huff has never been a full-time player. We've never seen him play full-time. You just don't know. Nolan Smith, Mike, to be the first guy off the bench now. It's a big role for him. And maybe he pushes for even more playing time. He barely contributed year one. He's got a first-round pick. He's got to play more this season or it's going to be a problem. See, and then, of course, BG at 36. I mean, clearly has something left. He was in his minor role last season. He did well with it. Jalen Hunt, there might be some weeks he doesn't play. So, Mike, it's not that they don't have players. They're fine with depth. It's just all of them have questions, Mike. Let's call it like it is. If you don't, you just don't understand football. All of them have to show in their role, Mike, that they can handle it for whatever we just outlined all the questions. They all have questions.
Adam, linebacker's always a question. The inside linebacker spot's been a question for a while. Is it still?
Again, they've added. They don't need it. They don't need any more players. Okay, they have enough players. But the question is, Mike, how good is it? As a veteran personnel man told me this week, and he watches his team's practice tape. He puts very little into off-season practices. He doesn't make any determination of anything. So, I said to this guy, I don't know if you've seen Devin White before, but he's, look, I'm well aware of him. I saw him for free agency, and he looked at his tape for free agency, and he goes, look, the guy's still pretty gifted, but there's a reason why the Bucs want no parts of him anymore. They don't want him back. So you got that issue. You got Zach Bond, but he's talented. You got Zach Bond, who's going to play inside linebacker for the first time in his career at this level. You just don't know. Now, could he win the job? We'll see. Where they're going to land Nakobe Dean, I think he's going to be a Mike or a Will. It's more of a Mike linebacker. The Eagles purposely limited him because he came back for the Liz Frank rupture. It's a major injury, Mike. And then you got Burks, who's a good backup. Trotter Jr., who will, he won't. There'll be some weeks he doesn't dress, but the hope is he'll be on the team. And Ben Van Sumeren, who definitely showed he could play at this level. That Giants game, he was great. So here's the cool thing: they got depth and they got competition. But the question is, how good are these players? They don't have one guy where you go, we're good here. Where this guy's a really good football player, and there are no questions. Like with Jordan Davis, like with Jalen Carter, I have no questions except for one thing: his condition was not good enough late in the season, and he was freelancing a little bit. But the dude's an absolute stud.
Well, the cornerback room we can probably spend an hour on because there's like 9 guys competing here, but. What is the takeaway post-minicamp as they enter training camp 5 weeks from now?
They've got way better depth, way better talent, Mike. Now, Slade's got one good year left in him. 33 years old. He had the knee surgery. He felt that he had the procedure done that would help him. We'll see. We'll see what he looks like during training camp. The good news is they learned a lot about Isaiah Rodgers. They had no idea what to expect other than whatever their agent told them because he was never with them before. Obviously, he didn't play last year, didn't play or practice. He answered the bell. He's in good shape. He could run. He's one of the fastest corners they have. He's just smaller, around just over 5'10". Ringo looks like he's kind of revived his career, building on a handful of decent snaps late last season. But again, off-season practices, these don't mean very much. There was absolutely no physical play, Mike, in the off season. So we're gonna learn with what we saw real or Member X, as they said. Remember that Member X ad many years ago? It was what we saw and heard about Ringo real. Well, we're going to learn in training camp. Quinyon Mitchell, I'm fully expecting to start week 1 opposite Slay. I'd be stunned if he doesn't. He'd really have to be bad in training camp not to start. Can Eli Ricks push to be one of the top backups like he was last year? That remains to be seen. But the cool thing is, Mike, they've got youth, they've got depth, they got competition. I'm choosing to believe, Mike, that this group is going to hold up. I know it didn't hold up last year, but I'm going to take the optimistic side and say, you know what, this group's a little bit better than people think.
Yeah, they got a lot of names in there, so you would hope 3 of them can stand out. And then finally, the safety position, does that include James Bradbury?
All right, so a couple things. I didn't mention Cooper DeJean because we don't know where he's going to line up. I want to be clear because I know sometimes what I say on your show here gets blogged or whatever, and I appreciate it. I'm not saying I know this, but my loose prediction is we're going to see DeJean line up at nickel, inside corner. There are 3 types of nickel players: nickel inside corner, nickel outside corner, and safety, a nickel safety, where you play a 3 safety alignment, the so-called big nickel. I see him more as a nickel inside corner over Maddox, but we'll see how it plays out. Remember, the DB's coach said that they're going to eventually get him to just play one position. And every team we seem to speak with, Mike, this offseason said, if we draft him, he's playing nickel inside corner for us because we want to get him on the field immediately and get his feet wet. And by the way, that's a position that typically plays 60 to 70% of the time. Now, getting back to safety, no depth at all. It's Gardner Johnson, terrific football player, big-time player, great contract the Eagles did with him, big injury history. You know what you're going to get from him, Mike? He's a playmaker. They needed him badly last year. It's too bad he didn't come back then, but he's back now. Reed Blankenship, you'd rather him be your third safety. He just doesn't run well enough. Smart, instinctive player. The third safety right now, well, Sidney Brown, it's not a question will he be ready for week 1. It's how effective will he be for the first quarter of the season. Nobody can answer that. And we don't know if he'll get any time in August on the field. So, Mike, Mekhi Garner will obviously try to push for a safety spot. Maddox got some snaps at safety, and he's done it before. That'll help Maddox make the football team. His contract, Mike, is so low. It's not a big contract. It's very cuttable. He's got to earn his keep. Now, I certainly will put Maddox on my 53 unless he's a bad camp. And he also obviously has experience there, and that matters. And positional versatility also matters. And don't forget about Tyler Hall, who the Eagles like, who's competing to be a backup nickel. Let's see what happens with him. The cool thing is, Mike, where they got crushed at nickel due to injuries last year, nickel slot, now they've got depth and competition, so that's going to be a good thing.
Well, there you go. A look at the defense. Training camp, as Adam said, about 5 weeks from now as we hit the hot month of June. It's hot today down the shore. But, hey, plenty to go. We'll talk more on next week's Football at 4 about the state of the NFL, the rosters, and who looks good coming into the summer with Adam Kaplan and the boys from the Inside the Birds podcast. Thank you, Adam.
Thank you.
And, of course, Adam Kaplan and the Football at 4 is powered by the Inside the Birds podcast each and every day here on the Sports Bash Live on 97.3 ESPN, the 97.3 ESPN free mobile app, and streaming live video on the X platform at 973 ESPN. Use the hashtag SB Live to find us. We've got plenty more. Yeah, we were talking about the 33rd team did their top 10 rosters entering the 2024 season. Eagles came in at number 2 on that list. I have a couple thoughts on some of the stuff going on with the Eagles this week. One, this story, quote unquote, with Nick Sirianni, Jalen Hurts. I look at it like this. They had an opportunity to fire Nick Sirianni. They had an opportunity to ask Jalen Hurts if he had a problem with Nick Sirianni. Wouldn't you think this would have been hashed out at that time? Like, am I supposed to believe that Howie Roseman and Jeffrey Lurie, two very successful people, didn't have the foresight to ask the quarterback that they paid money to, hey, do you not get along with the coach? I mean, I get people wanting to say things just to say things and have a hot take from time to time. But how asinine is that? I mean, do we not think that they asked the coach and the quarterback, hey, do you guys get along? Can this relationship coexist? And they both did. You hear how stupid this sounds? That people want to try to say the quarterback doesn't like the coach. I don't know. I don't get it. To me, you sit down with the coach and the quarterback individually, separate, different rooms. Hey, Jalen, can you play for Coach Sirianni? Are you guys cool? Do you have a good relationship? If he says, you know what, guys, I don't think he's the guy. Guess what? Sirianni's clipped. He's gone. You don't get to June and then he doesn't answer the question the way that you like and then decide, oh, these guys don't like each other. You sound like an idiot. I'm Mike Gill, and this is the Sports Bash Live on 97.3 ESPN, the free mobile app. Streaming live on the X platform at 97.3 ESPN. Knicks Nuggets, they're up next.
We have the perfect traffic.
You come with me.
The Sports Bash with Mike Gill on 97.3 ESPN and the 97.3 ESPN free mobile app.
All right, 4:30 on the Sports Bash Live, 97.3 ESPN, the 97.3 ESPN free mobile app, streaming live on the X platform at 97.3 ESPN. Nick Earnshaw's back with another edition of Knicks Nuggets. They're brought to you by Bet365. Whatever the sport, whatever the moment, it's never ordinary. At Bet365, he is on his way to Charm City, baby. Baltimore for the Phillies and the Orioles this weekend. Two World Series, potential World Series matchup. Two World Series contenders collide at Camden Yards. And it's right now on the Sports Bash on 97.3 ESPN. It's today's edition of Knicks Nuggets. What's up, Nick?
What's going on, Mike? Nice to hear from you. We're on 95 South right now. We're getting close. We're a little bit of traffic right now, but it's been fantastic. I can't wait to get down there. It's a big game for the Phillies. It's huge. After coming off 2 straight losses to Boston. You have another AL East team just right down 95, and this is going to be a big matchup. Got Ranger Suarez on the mound tonight. I'm looking forward to it, Mike.
Yeah, it's going to be a big pitching matchup all weekend long down there. And, yeah, Orioles are playing good. Phillies not. Got to hope that they get past the London jet lag, the London hangover, which it looked like that kind of hit them the last couple nights.
Yeah, it definitely seems like a little bit of a hangover. I wonder, because are you still trying to get back into the time zone thing? Did that affect you at all? Because it seems like they might have affected the Phillies a little bit.
I got to say, the one day, I got in on Monday. After I got back, Monday or Tuesday, I was rough. It was a rough Tuesday. But by Wednesday, I was starting to come around. But I got to say, I think it affects everybody a little differently. But, some of them guys might be feeling it, some not, but there's a lot of travel. Keep in mind, I went from London to my bed. They went to London to Boston and now to Baltimore. I needed my bed, and I got my bed. They didn't quite get their bed yet. They still have another trip. For people who travel a lot, going from one hotel to another hotel, like, it sounds fun and everything. But there's times when you're on vacation and you're just like, I just want my bed. And that's what makes these long road trips tough, let alone a trip to London instead. This isn't like you're going to, Milwaukee and then over to Chicago. Those are quick little trips. So it's a long trip. There's no doubt. I'm sure everybody can certainly feel like, hey, there gets to a point where you just want your bed.
Right, exactly. No, I totally think that might be part of it, right? Like, they come straight to Boston and Baltimore. It's not like they came right from Philadelphia, go right back to Philadelphia and go into like somewhere like you said, Milwaukee or somewhere like that. They've been continuously traveling. So I think it definitely had an effect. But tonight they're taking on the O's, and that's where we're going to start with nugget number 1. Mike, I don't know if you knew this. So the Phillies, they haven't played a ton at Camden Yards over the years. But it's the first time the Phillies and Orioles have met at Camden Yards where both teams have winning records. The Orioles struggled over the course of the past 20 to 30 years. They're finally one of those teams that are at the top of the league, right? They're right at the top near the division in the AL East behind the Yankees. But they have a lot of good young players. I can't believe that stat, though, that this is the first time they've met with winning records. Obviously, the Phillies over the past 15 or so years, since 2022 was the first time they really had a winning record in a while. So it's very interesting to see these two teams match up, because this could potentially be a World Series matchup with the young that the Orioles do have. Bradish is on the mound for them tonight. So this is going to be an interesting matchup. Could be a World Series preview, Mike.
Yeah, no doubt. By the way, Baltimore was a team last year before the season start that I thought could be like a surprise playoff team. They weren't only a surprise playoff team. They were one of the best teams in baseball, but it's because, as you said, yeah, well, they had all these young guys, and those young guys are the stars of this team. And they're a completely different type of team. They're a very young team, and their problem last year was they didn't have that pitcher. They didn't have that top of the rotation guy, and they kind of went out, quickly in the playoffs. Well, now they go out and get Corbin Burns. You're going to see him this weekend. They went out and got Bradish, or they have Bradish. So they've got a couple guys now that should make this team a legit World Series. Last year, I think they were a young team, a fun story. But with Burns now at the top of that rotation, they should be more of a legit World Series contender.
Yeah, it's a shame because JT Realmuto goes down with the injury. It would have been a really, really cool matchup to see, the catching matchup. JT Realmuto versus Adley Rutschman. Rutschman has been on a tear this year. He has been absolutely fantastic over the past couple of years. He was in the home run derby last year. He's a star for the Orioles. That's a guy I'm watching. Gunnar Henderson, another name you got to watch for the Orioles too. He's been unbelievable. He's like one of the top in home runs this year. He's got a lot of power. They have a lot of really good young talent down there in Baltimore. So this is no easy task if you're the Phillies. You're coming off the tough loss against the Boston Red Sox, two straight losses to them. Now going down to Baltimore. Baltimore just played Atlanta, and Atlanta, beat them yesterday. So, this is going to be a fun game to watch. You got Ranger against Bradish. This is a fantastic pitching matchup to start off a series. So this is going to be a fun one for sure heading into Father's Day weekend.
And Burns and Wheeler on Sunday, too.
Oh, that's going to be fantastic. So, and then Grayson Rodriguez, you get Taijuan Walker on Saturday. A lot of really good pitching. So we'll see tomorrow if Walker can build off of what he did in London and could, go maybe 5-6 innings again, because he was fantastic in his last start against the Mets.
Yeah, guess what? I flew all the way to London and saw Walker, and now Baltimore, I get Walker.
Yeah, so you're getting Walker 2 games in a row.
Yeah.
Because you're going to be down there tomorrow.
Yep, so I get a couple Walker starts.
That's all right. Listen, you'll enjoy. At least you'll enjoy tonight. You get to see Ranger and Bradish on the mound. You get to enjoy it from the comfort of your own home. Like, it's all right. It's all right. But maybe Walker has another big start, and they don't blow it for him this time.
Yeah, all right. Yeah. So I'm looking forward to the. Look, Baltimore's like my second city. I said I don't know what time. You guys are getting close there, right? But you're going right to the stadium.
Yeah, we're getting close. Yeah, I'd say we're probably 15, 20 out from the stadium.
All right. Well, you probably won't have time to check out Max's Tap House, but that's where you should go.
All right. That's a good recommendation. I'll do another nugget for you. I'll do a second nugget before I get rolling here. I don't know if you saw this, Mike. Now, Madden comes out with a new game every year, Madden NFL 25 this year. They changed up the broadcasters this year in the new Madden football game, and it has a Philadelphia tie. Kate Scott will be one of the play-by-play announcers for Madden, not basketball, for the NFL. Mike Tirico being another name as well in the game. But how about Kate Scott? Because she's called a little bit of football. I believe she did the Seattle Seahawks preseason last year. But the Sixers play-by-play announcer, she's going to be in the new Madden game. I don't know if you saw that.
We had Kate Scott. I do the Announcer Schedules podcast. She was on there a while back, and part of it was because she got, she was named, she does football. She has done college football, Pac-12. She was like the Pac-12, like game of the week broadcaster. I think she did the Seattle Seahawks preseason games this year, if my memory serves. So she does have football in her background. I don't remember if I heard that she was doing the Madden game or not, but she does have football in her background. Yeah. So, but I don't know that she did the Seahawks, but she's never done an NFL regular season game, I don't think.
Yeah. No, I don't know if she's done regular season. I know she did Seattle last year during the preseason. But yeah, she's going to be in the new Madden game, but that got announced today. So I thought that was like an interesting little nugget, because you got to do like hours and hours of like pre-recorded stuff. There's a lot that goes in. I forget who did like a behind the scenes like tutorial. They did like a video of one of the games. It might have been like 2K or something like that. But yeah, Kate Scott, she's I guess been keeping this in her back pocket for a little while, and it gets announced today that she's going to be one of the play-by-play announcers in the new Madden. How about that?
That's pretty crazy, considering Mike Tirico and Greg Olsen are combining there. That's an interesting pairing because what if Olsen is the heir apparent to Collingsworth at some point? Who knows?
Right. Yeah, like what if Olsen leaves Fox? Is Tom Brady's going to take over the number one broadcast team with Kevin Burkhardt? I mean, that's going to be a duo. Get to see Brady on the first team there with Fox, but with Olsen moving to 2, like Olsen was really good with Burkhardt, so he's moving to 2. I would think at some point down the line he might move to another network and possibly I don't know be a 1 there.
Yeah, I'm trying to think. We were talking about possibly Amazon Prime as a possibility.
Yeah, take Kirk Herbstreit off because he's more of a college guy anyway. Maybe down the line that could be an opportunity for Olsen to slide in there. I don't know. He's going to be the 2 this year for the Fox broadcast team.
All right, well, Knicks Nuggets are on their way to Baltimore, so we'll let the Nuggets go for the 2-pack today. As he's going to Baltimore, he'll have plenty of sights and sounds tomorrow morning in the locker room. And don't forget to check out this week's edition of the Shift podcast. And, of course, Knicks Nuggets next week right here on the Sports Bash. Thanks, Nick.
All right, Mike. Appreciate you letting me call in. It's going to be a fun one tonight. Hopefully the Phils come away with a W.
Yeah, we need a dub after a couple of losses there. By the way, did you know the 2 teams, the Cardinals and the Cubs, they played in London last year, they won a combined 1-5 in their first series after the trip. They got outscored 42-18 in those series. So shouldn't be much of a surprise that the Phillies not playing so well. All right, coming up, more Sports Bash live on 97.3 ESPN.
The Sports Bash with Mike Gill on 97.3 ESPN and the free mobile app.
Sports Bash, 97.3 ESPN, the 97.3 ESPN free mobile app, streaming live on the X platform at 97.3 ESPN. I'm Mike Gill. Want to welcome all of our viewers today. A lot of you streaming live on the X platform. Use the hashtag SBLive. All you need to do is pull up what was formerly Twitter, now X. Search 973 ESPN and pinned to the top of our Twitter X feed is today's show. So, by the way, Kate Scott, the Sixers play-by-player, I didn't know she was doing the Madden game. That just got announced today. She is the Seattle Seahawks preseason game play-by-player. She also did the Pac-12 game of the week. Was that on radio, right?
Learfield, yeah.
Learfield, right. It was on radio. So she will be, she will be the new voice, one of the voices.
Right. It looks like that.
Mike Tirico, Greg Olson.
Right. Two of them. But the idea is that, like, the voices will change depending on, like, environment, game type, stuff like that in Madden.
Yeah, Brandon Gaudine, who's the Braves play-by-player, with Charles Davis.
Yeah, Gaudin also does
Westwood 1.
Westwood 1. And Charles Davis does CBS, I think, still.
Yep, and Kate Scott will be with Brock Hurd, who is a Seattle-based former quarterback.
Former quarterback?
Yeah. So there's the update on that. I knew because she is also going to be one of the voices for, I believe, the World Cup.
Correct. She's going to be doing that.
We had her on the Announcers Podcast. For those of you who listen to the Announcers Podcast that I do with Phil. By the way, did I tell you a story about Phil?
What's that?
So I do a podcast called Announcer Schedules with a guy named Phil DeMont-Mullen. He is the guy who runs the handle at Announcer Skeds. There's like 35,000 followers who follow this podcast, okay? And I've never met the man, okay? He lives in North Carolina, and I live here.
Right.
We had a mutual friend or acquaintance, I would say, who basically said, hey, you were two guys, obviously Phil, who had 35,000. At the time, he had like 25,000 followers. It has since grown to 37,000 followers. And at the time, he obviously is a big fan of like the announcer world and all that kind of geeky stuff, as am I. So this mutual acquaintance we had connected us through Twitter and said, why don't you guys work on a podcast about the announcers? Well, 102 episodes later, we have a podcast that is very popular. In fact, I had a call today from a company who wants to buy the podcast. That's how popular the podcast has gotten.
Are you done bragging?
And, well, they don't want to buy it. They want us to do the podcast on their platform. Anyway.
Still cool.
So I went to London.
Yes.
Phil, my Announcer Schedules podcast co-host, randomly was in London at the same time as me.
Did you meet up?
I met Phil in London.
Did meeting Phil meet your expectations?
Oh, he's a nice guy. I mean, it's weird, though. You talk to somebody every week, 102 episodes.
Sure.
And you never see the guy in person. You're only talking virtually.
Right.
So we met in London last week with Philly Sports Trips. We were on the Philly Sports Trips, Phillies pregame party on a pontoon boat in London. What a world, right?
Very cool.
Yeah, so the funny part is he is now in Scotland, and this week we did not do a podcast because I just didn't have time to do it without him. Normally he's the one that like, hey, this is the time. Because if he doesn't give me a time, I got so much stuff going on that I don't have the time. I'm just like, whenever you tell me you're ready, I'm ready.
Gotcha.
This week there was no one to tell me, hey, I'm ready. But you can download the podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify. You know what? I'm using Podbean.
How's that going for you?
That's okay. It's not Google. Google was by far the best. Podbean's okay. It's not Google.
It's not Google.
No.
Right.
Google was the best podcast by far.
So you still feel a little let down?
I do. I switch. Sometimes I use YouTube. Sometimes I use Spotify. I don't know what makes me change, but Podbean seemingly the one that I'm going to. By the way, it's a happy hour Friday. So Josh brought a prop in today. I'm going to hold it up for the people watching the show. The beer is called Ephus, like an Ephus pitch.
Correct.
It says Gusto?
It's from Gusto Brewing.
Oh, I didn't realize. I didn't even realize that until I just held this up.
Yeah, so it's Gusto Brewing in North Cape. They collaborated with Major League Brews.
At Major League Brews on Twitter.
Yeah,
X.
and basically they debuted this the day of the Phillies, right before first pitch on Saturday. They have it on tap at Can down there. It's an English-style bitter, but it's not actually that bitter. It kind of almost has a hint of like a Citra taste to it in the hops. It's a very crisp brew, and I had to bring the can in, Mike, because the design with the baseball bat.
Well, there's a picture of
the Fanatic.
The Fanatic wearing his London gear.
Correct.
Like the changing of the guard.
Yeah, and it's just a cool can. It's a good beer, too, but definitely a very happy hour Friday, Phillies-themed combination there.
Now, you want a good laugh? Should I just go through the beers that I had in London?
All the beers that we can't drink over here?
Well, I mean, you might be able to find them here. I don't know. I would imagine you can't. Let's see. Man, I had a lot. Well, we went to different places,
right,
like on that brewery trail. So I'm trying to see where I started. All right, this one was called Dream Factory from Two Tribes. I gave it a 3.5.
Okay.
IPA Mosaic from Partisan Brewing. That one I didn't like so much. Levelhead from Green King. That one I didn't like. There was another one that was called Mayflower. Their IPAs are not like as punchy as ours.
Okay, so they're not as intense.
Yeah.
You're saying.
Yeah. Mayflower Session from I always say this wrong. Southwark Brewing. That's
sure.
Well, it's spelled Southwark, but it's Southwark over there.
Sure.
Low Voltage from Brixton. I like that one. That was one that I liked.
I like
good.
that name.
Strata was my favorite of all of them. I gave it a 4.25. That was from the Barrel Project. Strata was the name of that beer.
It must have been really impressive for you to get over the 4.
Yes. Arctic Sky from Harbor Brewing. Yippee-Ki-PA.
I like that. A little Die Hard reference.
Yippee-Ki-PA. That was from Bianca Road Brew Company. So those were like the different breweries on the Bermondsey Beer Mile.
Nice.
Happy Hour Friday, everybody. What's everybody having on this Happy Hour Friday? Shaner chimes in. He says, Happy Hour Friday, cold bottle of Yuengling, feet up with the sun and some Sports Bash. Ah, yes, the Sports Bash, football at 4 and a nice cold Yuengling. Sounds just like you, Shaner. Appreciate you chiming in. Coming up, more Sports Bash on a Happy Hour.
This is the Sports Bash with Mike Gill on 97.3 ESPN and the 97.3 ESPN free mobile app. Now live from inside the Ocean Casino Resort Studio, here's Mike Gill.
Happy Hour Friday here on the Sports Bash Live, 97.3 ESPN, the 97.3 ESPN free mobile app, streaming live on the X platform at 973 ESPN. Use the hashtag SB Live. Phils tonight, they're down in Baltimore. We'll get you the lineup here in just a moment. As the Phils and the Orioles, big first place Phils against I think the best team in the American League. They're not in first place. I think they're better than the Yankees. Here's the lineup for the Phils. It's Schwarber, Castellanos, Harper, Bohm, Stott, Sosa, Dahl, Pache, Marchand, Suarez. Ranger gets the ball tonight against the O's. Down in Baltimore for a weekend of baseball. Anybody going down to the game this weekend? Let us know. 609-403-0973. 609-403-0973. Who's going down to Baltimore for a game this week? I know a lot of people going. I know people going on the Philly sports trip tomorrow. That game is a 4:00 start. So the Philly sports trip bus is leaving at 10 in the morning. They're going to the game and then they're coming back afterwards. I know a bus trip that's going from this area on Sunday for Father's Day. So anybody doing any of those, let me know. And I'll give you a couple places to go. I've been telling people on the text board all day. People keep texting in, Mike, where do I go in Baltimore? I'll give you more info at the end of the show. We got Big 3 coming up. But right now, we're going to talk a little football. Sal Paolantonio here on the Sports Bash Live, 97.3 ESPN, the 97.3 ESPN free mobile app. His new book is out, How Football Explains America. How football became our national pastime. We're going to get into that and more as we are joined by ESPN senior national correspondent at ESPN, Sal Paolantonio, on a Sal Pal Friday. Sal, how you doing, man?
I'm doing pretty good, Mike. Good to see you. Good to talk to you. I'm glad you're back safe and okay from London. That was a great little 2-game series the Phillies had in London. Didn't end well, but I watched every inning. I thought it was fascinating. I really did. I loved it. And, minicamp, Mike, for the Philadelphia Eagles, the first full mandatory minicamp of the Nick Sirianni era was very interesting. There were a lot of intriguing little storylines that went on and a lot of interesting things that will carry over into training camp. I think the most important thing was the new look of the defense and the presence of some veterans at all three levels of this defense. You had to remake that defense, and you could just tell that C.J. Gardner-Johnson, Devin White, Bryce Huff, they all had a presence on this defense, along with the unseen hand of Vic Fangio. I was fascinated by how that was all getting itself together rather quickly.
I want to talk more about the mini camps in just a second, but I know you read 33rd Team, and I don't know if you came across this article either yesterday or today, but it came across, they ranked the rosters in the NFL. Philadelphia, number 2. Are we overlooking this team and this roster? It feels like people don't know what to think about this Eagles team. I was pretty surprised. Pro Football Focus had them number 3, 33rd Team number 2. Is this Eagles team better than everybody is kind of giving them credit for?
Oh, I saw that, Michael, and I think that their roster definitely is in the top 3. There's no question about it. They have firepower on offense. They have a good mix of young and old on defense. The addition of Saquon Barkley, I realize, he's got over 2,000 carries. He's 27 years old. He's already had a major knee injury, major knee surgery that he's had to come back from. But the Eagles invested $37 million in this guy, and he is going to be, I think, a very important part of Kellen Moore's offense, both in the running game and in the passing game. That was very evident during minicamp practice. Just his presence on the field, I think, will be significant. So I think their roster is in the top 3 of the National Football League, despite losing Jason Kelce, who led the offensive line in snaps last year, despite losing Fletcher Cox, both to retirement. Cox was on the field 54% of the defensive snaps last year. They're going to miss both of those players, and young players will have to take their place and do a lot of work in order to live up to what they did last year. But I do agree with them, both Pro Football Focus and 33rd Team, that the Eagles have a top 3 roster.
Yeah, I feel like every time I see these things, and, this time they were 2, ahead of Kansas City, I'm thinking, man, are the Eagles better than everybody's giving them credit for? Because it feels like people are skeptical. They don't know what to think. And you talked about it, the coordinators, Vic Fangio, and how much that will impact the changes on this defense. You talked about Chauncey Gardner-Johnson, Sal. That corner room, if you went to training camp and just watched the battle at corner, you're going to see a party over there. That's going to be an interesting battle with the 2 rookies. What do they do with James Bradbury? And then that group of the other guys, Isaiah Rodgers and Josh Jobe and obviously Eli Ricks and Kaylee Ringo. They got a lot of guys that are very intriguing.
They do, and they're all pushing one another. That's pretty clear. The rookie Mitchell is making a big jump. I'm interested to see how that plays out. Isaiah Rodgers is going to get a run for his money. But listen, last year in 2023, there were 4 cornerbacks picked in the first round. All 4 of them started for their respective teams. If Mitchell does not start for the Eagles at corner, then that, to me, would be a major setback for this team.
Same feeling on Cooper DeJean? Does he have to be a starting player or a big factor, or is that a disappointment if he's not?
I'm interested to see where they're going to play him. You know, he was drafted as a corner. He's listed on the depth chart as a backup in the slot. So, could he see time at safety? Perhaps. He could do a lot of different things. He's obviously got return skills. But, he is going to be in the mix. But both of these guys, Cooper DeJean and Quinyon Mitchell, are going to push for starting jobs. And, competition is good, especially in training camp. And, Mike, so is depth. It's a 17-game season. I mean, that's why you have groups like 33rd Team and Pro Football Focus looking at the entire roster, right? You might say, well, Patrick Mahomes gives the Chiefs a much better roster just because of his presence over Jalen Hurts. I mean, just that factor alone. But you have to take the whole 53-man and figure in how it's going to be through a 17-game season. A lot of time between now and then.
No doubt. Obviously, the linebacker is always a question with this team. Devin White, Nakobe Dean, we'll see how that all plays out there. That defensive line rotation, who takes the snaps for Fletcher Cox. How about Becton playing guard? Does that intrigue you at all?
Oh, it does. Becton's a former first-round pick, for sure. Moving him to guard, he was a tackle, is going to be interesting. Listen, they got to find the right combination. They have the best offensive line coach in the league. But more important, Mike, to me, is, I wrote 3 notes down on Kellen Moore's offense that what I saw at mandatory minicamp and what I'm looking for in training camp. Number 1 was motion and shifts to create favorable matchups. Last year, the Eagles were near the bottom in the league in motion, pre-snap motion, and shifts. And as a result, they presented a very vanilla picture to defenses. And, they had no real, I thought, snap, crackle, pop for Jalen Hurts. The second thing is the blitz beaters. You don't see that very much in minicamp, but you'll see it certainly during training camp. And the blitz is what really crushed the Eagles' offense down the stretch. They really had no answer, which is kind of shocking that a team at that level would have no answer week in and week out. But number 3 was who calls the protection on offense. How does it get called? Who calls it? Because Jason Kelce was among the best, really, in my view, ever to do it in an Eagles uniform. His ability to see and recognize what the defense was presenting and call a protection for Jalen Hurts, despite the fact that they had problems with blitz beaters last year, he was still in charge of that. Now you put Cam Jurgens in there. You have to have Jalen Hurts into the mix. Stoutland, Kellen Moore, all of this has got to be built in to protect the quarterback, so they have answers to where the blitz is coming, whether it's overload, whether it is guys backing out into coverage. It's going to be fast. To me, that's it's not sexy, Mike. It's not sexy, but boy, is it important.
It's something, I think Wink Martindale was on a podcast the other day. My producer was telling me, he talked about how difficult it was as a coordinator to game plan because of Kelce and how good he was. And all of the things you just mentioned, how he picked up the blitz and pointed it out, and that made his job as the coordinator that much more difficult. How does Jurgens take over that role? I talk about that as it's almost like something that we're almost like taking for granted, that one guy's gone, the next guy's going to step in and just do the same thing. Probably not.
Well, you would hope. He certainly got the training for it. And Kelce's going to be in the building helping him. You got the best offensive line coach in Jeff Stoutland, so he's not going to have, for lack of training and coaching, but you still got to go out there and do it. Again, it's not sexy, but I have it in my top 3 as the most important things to look at with the offense. Number 4 would be Saquon Barkley. I'm very interested to see on first and second down how they're going to utilize him in the running game, what it's going to look like. Is it going to be RPO? Is it going to be quick hitters? Is it going to be, misdirection kind of stuff? Is it going to be stuff that involves Jalen Hurts off the edge? I'm fascinated to see. They're not going to reveal that, Mike, too much until they go to Brazil.
Do you anticipate Barkley being a bigger part of the pass game?
He'll be a 3-down back. That's what he was brought here for. You don't pay him $37 million to be there off the field on third down, Mike. He's going to be a 3-down back. But, again, timing on those wheel routes, on those quick hitters on the edge. Jalen Hurts has got to get that timing with Saquon Barkley. The ball's kind of come out quickly, and they definitely have to work on that. That'll be an important, integral part of what Kellen Moore. 2021, when Kellen Moore was the offensive coordinator of the Cowboys led the NFL in points per game, points scored per game. And Dak Prescott had his best season as a pro. So Kellen Moore's got a lot of experience. He's only 35, but he's got 5 years running an offense at the NFL level. And Kellen Moore, let's be frank about it. You got Zach Taylor in Cincinnati, Sean McVay in L.A., you've got young coordinators who have become head coaches at the, and Kellen Moore, this is a time where he's got to, make his bones so that he can become a head coach.
By the way, my producer found the audio from Wink. I want to play that for you. So you said it's not sexy, but this is what Wink Martindale said about why Kelce was so good compared to other centers around the league.
Kelce's a different animal. To me, he's a first ballot Hall of Famer. We've become friends over the years because he can see it. He studies it. He works at it as a center. With most centers, it's not that way. You can move late, show things late where they can't see it after they've made their checks.
Just what we were talking about. He sees stuff ahead of time. You could show stuff late. Kelce still picks it up. And will that be something that Jurgens is able to do? Because he said not a lot of guys can do that.
Well, you're taking. I'm on the. I'm on the Hall of Fame enshrinement selection committee.
Is Wink right? Is Kelce a Hall of Famer?
I have one of the 46 votes, and I'll be in the room promoting Jason Kelce as a first ballot Hall of Famer. I agree. If you go on Sal Pal ESPN, my Instagram account, you will see I did a whole breakdown of why I think Jason Kelce is a first ballot Hall of Famer. I agree with Wink. So there's two things here, Michael. There's pre-snap. The center comes up to the line of scrimmage and sees where the defense is and what approach they look like they're going to take. And then there's post-snap. After the snap, the shifts by the linebackers and the safeties. Who is pulling back into coverage? And luckily, they will be practicing against a Vic Fangio defense all summer, because what I saw was Fangio dropping linebackers, dropping White, dropping Jeremiah Trotter Jr., dropping Bryce Huff into coverage all the time. So that's something that will definitely be useful for Cam Jurgens to gain some experience.
Sal Pal, of course, the book is in my hand here for the people watching. And by the way, the viewership has shot up by about 50% since you have jumped on here. So everybody saw Sal Pal, and now they're jumping on. And here's the book, How Football Explains America, How Football Became Our National Pastime. And the book is out. When I got back from London, it was sitting right here for me. I had a good London trip, but a slice of Americana when I came home.
Yeah, that's nice, Mike. Thank you so much for promoting it. That's a brand new edition of that book that my publisher, Triumph Books, has put out. When I get to Ocean City this summer, make sure you bring your copy. And at Uncle Bill's, I will sign it for you.
By the way, did you see what Jason Kelce said about Uncle Bill's?
I've seen Jason Kelce at Uncle Bill's many, many times. He loves Uncle Bill's.
He said on the podcast, the best pancakes in the land.
Well, there's no question. I mean, notwithstanding Mrs. Palantonio, you understand that. She's listening in the other room. But she loves it, too. And I love, going to Ocean City and, either on Asbury Avenue or, down on 40th Street to one of those. So we've had breakfast there with Johnny G, the Griner team at Berger Realty. So I'm looking forward to bringing Johnny G a copy of this book. And you can get it at the Ocean City bookstore downtown. They've got copies of it, but Amazon.com has it for sure. Hopefully I'll do a signing in Ocean City this summer. But thank you for promoting the book. It's done, gangbusters, and it's a brand new edition of this book. You can get it on Amazon.com.
Now, do you have a favorite chapter? Is there one that kind of stands out to you in the book that you said that was my favorite one to kind of work on?
It really was the chapter that's called How Football Explains the 60s, because, that's when I grew up as a football fan. My dad was a big Green Bay Packer fan. Why? Because of Vince Lombardi. And we followed Bart Starr and the Packers during those championship years. And then Joe Namath showed up, and Namath became the siren song of a generation. And, it was the Packers and the Jets. And, that to me is when football really embraced the culture on television and became our national pastime and kind of usurped baseball. You know me, Mike. I'm like you. I love baseball. I'll watch baseball all day and all night. I love it. But, in terms of the ratings, you can't beat the National Football League. And we're looking forward to going to Brazil, Michael, and I'll be on your show from Brazil on Friday, the day of the game on week 1.
It's an amazing trip that they're, I was in London for baseball. The people over there, they had no idea what was going on, but they loved it. We'll see what happens in Brazil. That should be an interesting dynamic over there as well. Sal Palantonio, the book is called How Football Explains America. There's also a chapter about how football explains show business. And, man, it has really become a show of shows. And one of the showmen is your buddy Merrill Reese over there. Did you push for him to get into
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Merrill Reese is going to be in the Hall of Fame this summer, the 2024 Pete Rozelle Award winner, which is the broadcast wing of the Pro Football Hall of Fame in Canton, Ohio. It's great. Every year we put somebody in now that's associated with the Philadelphia Eagles. It's a grand tradition that we've started.
Yeah, well, listen, they got a bunch of players who have been deserving in the recent past here. And this roster here, we said, the number 2 roster in the league, as the 33rd team says there. The last thing, I guess, would be anything. Everybody seems to be in a big hullabaloo about Hurts's lack of support for Sirianni. Anything there in your mind?
Well, Michael, I think he was inartful in his comments about Sirianni. That's pretty clear. He probably would love to take that back and be a little bit more supportive. Maybe he was just trying to be truthful. I think the bottom line is what people need to understand is this is Kellen Moore's offense. As Jalen Hurts said, we're changing 95% of the offense. And when you do that, you have to have total control and not much ancillary input. I use that word ancillary, but it is the head coach. And the head coach is going to be involved in game planning. Obviously, he has to be. But the bottom line is it's got to come from Stoutland, who's the run game coordinator, Kellen Moore, who's going to be the overall coordinator of the offense and calling the plays, and then Jalen himself. And Sirianni's going to have to be part of that. There's going to be a lot of cooks in the room to try to figure this thing out. Mike, I got to tell you, it's about the most complicated way you could possibly go about it. For a team that has the second best roster or the third best, however you want to calculate it, for a team that, I have headed towards the NFC Championship game, for a team that, it's Super Bowl or bust. It's going to be a complicated summer for this group.
Lot to learn. What did Jalen Hurts say? 95% of the offense is brand new, and he's trying to make it his own. And, he's wrapped into all that because it's another new offense for Jalen Hurts. It's like 7 and 8 years or something like that, that he has had to learn a new offense. Once again, Sal Paolantonio, national correspondent, ESPN. The book is called How Football Explains America. It's a great beach prop for you there. You bring it down to the beach, you read a couple pages, you jump in the water, you come back and dive right back into the book all summer long. And, man, you said it. Training camp's going to be here before we know. When do they start? Like late July?
Yeah. Yep.
Can't wait.
Yep. Can't wait, Mike. And you have a great summer. I'll see you down in Ocean City. Thanks for all your promotion of the new book. And thanks for having me on the show. I really, really appreciate it.
All right. Thanks, Sal. Appreciate it, man. We'll talk to you soon. Sal Paolantonio, everybody, here on the Sports Bash Live on 97.3 ESPN, the 97.3 ESPN free mobile app. Coming up, the big three. Happy Hour Friday. What are you having on this Happy Hour Friday? Let us know. 609-403-0973. What are you having on a Happy Hour Friday? Get your picks in for the weekend. What's the spot? Where are you going? What are you having? A nice cold one for the Phillies and the Orioles. Big three is coming up next.
It's the Sports.
What's the easiest choice you can make? Window instead of middle seat? Picking a vendor who sends a great gift basket? Outsourcing business tasks you hate? What about selling with Shopify? Whether you're selling a little or a lot, Shopify helps you do your thing, however you cha-ching. Shopify is the global commerce platform that helps you sell at every stage of your business. From the launch your online shop stage to the first real-life store stage, all the way to the did we just hit 1 million orders stage. Shopify's there to help you grow. Whether you're selling scented soap or offering outdoor outfits, Shopify helps you sell. Wherever and whatever you're selling, Shopify's got you covered. Sign up for a $1 per month trial period at shopify.com/try. Go to shopify.com/try now to grow your business, no matter what stage you're in. Shopify.com/try.
Mike Gill.
And I am the voice of the voiceless.
On 97.3 ESPN and the 97.3 ESPN free mobile app.
$5:30 on a Happy Hour Friday. So, looks like Robert Cook is watching the show on Twitter X. It's Happy Hour Friday. What was he having on a Happy Hour Friday? He says something from Pinelands Brewery. I don't know that I haven't been there. I think I have had something from Pinelands. You ever had a beer at Pinelands?
I have not, but I've heard a lot of good things about Pinelands, and I've been told I should go to Pinelands, to which I've always said, who's going with me? And I never get an answer.
Yeah, Robert Cook watching the show on X. What's up, Robert? It's a nice avatar he has. It's like he's maybe had too many Pineland Brewery beers.
maybe it's the gateway to creativity.
Appreciate you watching the show, Robert. Text in, what are you having this weekend? 609-403-0973. Josh gave us the Ephus from Gusto.
Yep. English style beer. A hop from London itself, actually, to make that little brew. It's
the IPAs in London that I had anyway were just okay. Now, there was a beer down there called Neck Oil that I enjoy. I got it a bunch of times. I actually found it in Rome when I was in Rome 2 summers ago, and they had it everywhere in London. Like a lot of the pubs had it. It was kind of like a Budweiser down there.
Oh, wow. Okay.
I mean, just the fact that it was everywhere, yeah.
Interesting. Mike, I want to start for the big three with a story that came out last night after we were both done here at 97.3 ESPN. Trevor Lawrence, Mike, 5 years, $275 million, $200 guaranteed, $142 million at signing. So my first question for you, Mike, what is your reaction to Trevor Lawrence now being in the same category as the top paid quarterbacks in the league?
It's a good question. The problem is he was the number one pick. He's been productive. What are you supposed to do? I mean, so my reaction is he one of the top paid quarterbacks in the league because he's one of the top quarterbacks in the league? I don't think he's on that pedestal, but he's still good enough that you don't want to let him go and have to start over. He got you to an AFC championship game.
Right.
He's good enough. Can you win the Super Bowl with him? Probably, but he's not Patrick Mahomes. There's only one of those guys. You can't keep chasing the ghost of Patrick Mahomes. We used to say Tom Brady. There's only one of those guys. So if you have a guy that's in the mix, you're in the mix. So I think Jacksonville makes the right decision here. They get a guy that keeps them in the mix, and you have to pay for that guy. I mean, heck, you had to pay Daniel Jones, for God's sakes. And not to say that that's smart, but the Giants looked at it and said, what do? We keep chasing our tail, or do we, keep the guy we have that we drafted, and hopefully we put better pieces around him?
My second question for you, Mike, about Trevor Lawrence is he is now the only quarterback from the first round of the 2021 NFL Draft to receive a legitimate contract extension. He is also the only one of the 5 quarterbacks drafted who is still on the same team that drafted him. Zach Wilson, number 2 overall, was traded to the Broncos. Trey Lance, number 3 overall. If we're not traded up for him, he's now on the Cowboys. Justin Fields traded to the Steelers. And Mac Jones is now Trevor Lawrence's backup in Jacksonville. The Patriots traded him to Jacksonville. Is the 2021 quarterback class going to go down as one of the worst of all time?
Mac Jones, yeah, total flop. Yeah, that quarterback class. Look, I'm just not a big fan of. I've said this all the years with quarterbacks coming out of the draft. Now, I guess some of them can play, but I'm not a fan of drafting a quarterback in the first round just to draft one. And I feel so many of these teams just draft a guy in the first round because they need a quarterback, and it's like it's our year. We're in the top 6, so we got to take a guy. And inevitably, they end up looking for a quarterback 3 years later, 2-3 years later, because they've already given up on that guy. Because what happens is you draft a guy in the first round, then you have to play him right away. Hell, you can't sit. Do what the Packers do. That's why, looking on this, the Falcons may have got it right.
By accident?
Well, everybody's blasted them. Why would you take Michael Penix? You just signed Kirk Cousins. Well, how many great years is Kirk Cousins going to give you? 2?
I would say, though, you could have gotten Penix maybe later in the draft. You didn't have to get him that high. You could have traded down.
Well, I don't know about that. I think there was enough rumors that people liked him and that he would have been a first-round pick.
No, I meant trade down from that top 10 spot, further down the draft or something. Because, for example, all the speculation is that Sean Payton was in love with Bo Nix, for example.
Sure, maybe they could have done that. Maybe that's the mistake. But people are ripping them because they drafted him and they signed Cousins. Why sign Cousins? And I think they're looking at it as, look, Cousins is the quarterback for the next 2 years, and then Cousins is good enough to let us win the division, maybe.
Right.
Maybe we win the division, or maybe we're a wild card team. So if that's the case, we won't be bad enough to draft a quarterback in the first round, but now we have one. So they're looking at it big picture. Most people look at it, why didn't you get a guy to help you now? And they understand they're not winning the Super Bowl this year.
Sure.
But if we can win the division or be a wild card team, okay. And then when Cousins is kind of done, now we have our next guy, and he's been sitting on the sideline in the system for the next 2 seasons. I think if you look at it from that perspective, they might have done it better than a team like the Giants taking a swing at Daniel Jones with pick number, 9 or 6 or whatever number he was? 7?
I think it was 6. So, but still, you're right. And by the way, again, that's not a bad draft pick as well. So we're kind of getting to the point where it's looking around and being should we even draft quarterbacks sometimes anymore? I'm almost wondering that the way these teams overdraft these guys, Mike. But yeah, the 2021 draft class going down is one of the worst, and the only guy left standing is the prodigy, Mike. Trevor Lawrence. Mike, story number 2 also came out late last night. You will not see Conor McGregor at UFC 303. In fact, the UFC had not one but 2 major health issues in the last 24 hours. Conor McGregor was injured during training camp. He is off UFC 303 next month. Also, Khamzat Chimaev, he was so ill, he is still in the hospital for the last 2 days. he will not fight at UFC's event in Saudi Arabia next weekend. So UFC losing two big names off of upcoming matches to the point where UFC 303 has now had to be recalibrated altogether because, remember, it's International Fight Week next month. So it's supposed to be the biggest fight card of the year for the UFC. Conor McGregor on the card. And instead, we got to wait for him again. Your reaction to the UFC taking some body blows here?
So when was the last time McGregor actually fought?
About almost 3 years ago now, when he got his leg broken against Poirier.
So when was he supposed to fight?
Next month.
All right, I was going to say, if it was this weekend or something, my question I was leading to is, does anybody care about McGregor anymore? Because I didn't know. I knew he was coming back. I couldn't tell you he was fighting, and the buzz just didn't seem to be there. Has he lost the buzz?
It's a very valid question. I'm not going to say it's, totally out of the question to ask that question. I just felt like there was enough buzz, at least from what I saw, that people were like, finally he's coming back. Finally we get this fight.
I'm a casual fan, probably like on the higher end of casual.
Mm-hmm.
Although I haven't watched a fight in quite some time. I don't care about Conor McGregor anymore. I really don't. I think he's done. If he wins, great. What's that mean?
So you're saying it's almost like a blessing in disguise that he's off the card.
I don't know if it's a blessing. I'm sure he would draw still, but he's not drawing someone like me, and is my point. He might draw the hardcore Conor McGregor fans and all that stuff, but my point is I'm just kind of like, hey, I like UFC, but I don't watch every fight. I would usually say this might be a fight like old school McGregor fighting somebody. I'd be like, I'm into that. I don't care that he's fighting or not fighting.
I mean, it's just frustrating for the UFC because they're basically 3 weeks away from this card and they lose the top of the card due to an injury. Now, the reports are that they're going to try to rebook McGregor and Chandler for later this year, but there's a lot of rumors, Mike, out there, people speculating why he's not fighting.
I was more interested in Jake Paul against Mike Tyson.
What's that?
I was more interested in Jake Paul versus Mike Tyson.
Well, that'll be November.
Oh, they put that back on?
I believe. Well, no, they said they're going to book it for November, it looks like. So.
Oh, I didn't see that. No, that's a big 3 story. When did you see that?
That came out when you were in London. So.
Because Paul's fighting somebody else, right?
Logan Paul.
I thought it was Roy Jones Jr.
Let me double check.
There was, okay, so the whole, when that happened, I know Logan Paul, I think, offered to fight. But I didn't know that I mean, again, I was away, so I don't know. But I thought he was fighting Roy Jones Jr. Or that I thought that Roy Jones Jr. offered.
So according to this article that I have in front of me right now, this might have changed, but this was 2 days ago. Jake Paul will reportedly fight Mike Perry in July.
I don't know who that is.
Mike Perry is a former UFC fighter who is basically a volatile individual who basically worked his way out of the UFC.
So it's not Roy Jones or Logan
right. Paul. I'm trying to pull up the exact date for the Tyson versus Paul.
I did not hear that they were fighting in November.
I'm trying to get the exact date here for you.
Yeah. I'm more interested in Mike Tyson coming back than I am Conor McGregor coming back. And look, I have watched a lot of McGregor's fights, so I do give McGregor, I think he had that draw. He was that guy, but he's lost, I think, he hasn't won.
He hasn't won in over 4 years. The last time he won was against Donald Cowboy Cerrone.
Yeah, and Donald Cowboy Cerrone, I think, by that time.
That was the end of his career.
That was the end of his career.
By the way, it's November 15th.
So that's officially back on, thankfully.
Yes, you got Paul versus Tyson, November 15th, and the co-main for that will be Katie Taylor versus Amanda Serrano. So an actual legitimate boxing match is on that card as well.
I like that. I'm into the Tyson fight. McGregor, don't really care about.
You're out.
Yeah.
Mike, I put aside this one story just for you for the Big Three today. That wasn't originally on my list, but did you see the news about Sean McDonough?
The announcer?
Yes.
No.
So ESPN released a press release today confirming what people have been wondering about. Sean McDonough has been calling the Stanley Cup Finals pretty sick. He has been fighting through an illness almost the entire Stanley Cup Finals, which apparently has been affecting his voice. People have been wondering, hey, is Sean McDonough okay? His voice doesn't sound great on some of these calls. And ESPN confirmed today that Sean McDonough has been under the weather and he's been pushing through every game, despite the fact that he probably should have taken a night off here. Now, you interviewed Sean McDonough on the Announcer's Sked podcast, Mike, so I wanted to bring up to you, does it surprise you that the 62-year-old is basically fighting through Game 3? He had missed Game 2 during the Eastern Conference Finals.
What's the illness?
He basically got like a cold, basically.
But he missed Game 2? He's still sick?
Well, no, he missed Game 2 during the Eastern Conference Finals because he was sick. But it was thought that he was getting better, but apparently this illness he's fighting is still lingering. And in the Stanley Cup Finals, apparently McDonough refuses to let go of the Stanley Cup Final, take off for the Eastern Conference Final, but not the Stanley Cup.
I haven't heard him, so I haven't heard. Is it like, have you seen it?
I have. I mean, it doesn't sound horrible, but it's definitive that it's like, all right, he's not 100%. You know, like some of the excited calls, like it sounds strained, if I could describe it, the best way I would describe it. Like, cause you know how McDonough, you've heard him call games. Like, he's very good at like having that range between different moments. And you could tell some of those times when he transitions from like just a normal back and forth, that like his voice does not sound like it's anywhere near 100%.
Well, McDonough's one of my favorites. I didn't love him on Monday Night Football, but I like him a lot I liked him when he used to do baseball.
He's very good on baseball. Yeah.
And college football, very good. I had him on the Announcer podcast, had a great story about when he was a kid that people used to call his house and, you know, calling for his dad. And he'd answer the phone like his dad, Will McDonough.
Yeah.
And he'd say, hey, is Will there? And he said, I remember that all the time. All these different great broadcasters and athletes who would call the house.
Right.
And this is like his introduction to the broadcasting business.
Yeah, that was a great story that he had on the podcast. But yeah, I figured I'd throw that in there, Mike, because, you interviewed him and I thought it was interesting, that, how hard it is if you're not feeling well. And if it's lingering and lingering and lingering and you just don't get better and you're still, I think we got to give McDonough a lot of credit. I mean, this guy is saying, I am not letting go of this microphone for the Stanley Cup Final.
And listen, a couple of years ago, Mike Breen had to give up the game and it was Mark Jones who got the call.
Right.
So, we have seen it happen recently in basketball, but good for McDonough not giving it up here as, the Stanley Cup, which is what, 3-0?
3-0, yeah. It's probably the closest.
I think the biggest story in that was the woman who was at the Oilers game and pulled up her shirt and
tried to be a distraction.
It was a distraction, all right.
Well, distraction for everybody else.
Two big distractions. But that was the only highlight I think I've seen of that whole Stanley Cup.
Yeah, apparently, well, not apparently. The Oilers, Edmonton traffic control tried to keep the Panthers from landing when they were low on fuel after the Panthers got 7 flight delays leaving Florida.
And they still lost.
And they still won the game, Florida. Edmonton still can't win a game. Paul Maurice said after the game last night, they asked him, what's the game plan for game 4? And he said, I don't give a bleep. I'm going to bed. So, speaking of hockey, Mike, I did want to throw this in real quick. I gotta tell you, this is the stupidest thing I've ever seen. So they've been running this poll for the new Utah hockey team name because they're moving from Phoenix Coyotes to Utah, and they've decided to go with the Utah Hockey Club for a year while they finish figuring out the finalists. Mike, I mean, this is getting ridiculous, isn't it? Like, football team, hockey club.
Well, I would just say in soccer, that is quite normal to be called soccer. The FC, the football club.
This ain't soccer.
It's not, but if you want to own that, be the hockey club. Don't change your name.
The finalists, Mike, are the Blizzard, the Mammoth, the Outlaws, the Venom, and the Yeti.
What was it again?
The Blizzard.
Mm-hmm. Utah Blizzard.
Mammoth.
Utah Mammoth.
Outlaws.
Utah Outlaws.
Venom.
Utah Venom.
And Yeti.
Utah Yeti. 3 of those, by the way, don't have an S in the name, so that would add to that trivia question of professional sports teams that don't end in an S.
Right, that's true.
Yeah. I would just stay with the Utah HC.
I disagree 100%. Come on, man.
No.
You got to have a real name.
If you're going to start with that, that's what you stick with. You don't change it after one season of being the HC.
Well, they're changing it.
547 on the Sports Bash Live. 97.3 ESPN, the 97.3 ESPN free mobile app. Phil's down in Baltimore tonight. A couple Phil's news and notes on 2 injured stars when I come back here to close out a happy hour Friday. Get your happy hour Friday suggestions in to me now at 609-403-0973.
This is Mike Gill.
Keeping the fans entertained and happy.
On 97.3 ESPN and the 97.3 ESPN free mobile app.
Happy hour Friday. Get ready to get out of here. 609-403-0973. Give me a couple of good picks. Tom in Margate says, I love Isabella's across the street from a great Italian gelato shop. That's in Baltimore, Little Italy. Yeah, earlier in the show, people were asking me for a place to go in Baltimore who are going down to the game this weekend. Number 1 on the list is Max's Tap House. So if you go to Fells Point, Max's Tap House is right there. It's on the corner. It's an institution, like over 200 beers on draft. There's a place right around the corner. So if you go to Max's, come out the door, go straight to the corner, and then make a right to the next block over. And then about halfway down the block, there's a place called the Horse You Rode In On. It's supposedly like the oldest continuously running tavern in the country. You like that kind of stuff there, Josh?
I like that. It's interesting.
You go in, and there's like usually live music in the front, a little bar in the front. You walk through to the back, and all the seats are like horse saddles.
That's different. I like different.
Horse you rode in on.
All right.
Sit on like a saddle. That's your seat. Are you okay sitting on a saddle as your bar stool all night?
I love it all night, but I would certainly try it out for a while.
Good spot. We watched, who was it? The year TCU went undefeated. They somebody missed a field goal or something. They won 9-0. We watched that game there.
Okay.
2 years ago?
A couple years ago, yeah, with the national championship.
Yeah. There's a place called Ministry of Brewing. Get the Wispy. Wispy. Nice and crispy. They have food there, too, for brewery, but unlike New Jersey.
Not wimpy.
Not wimpy. Good word yesterday. That's all I got. You got anything fun tonight on game night?
I got Andy McNamara coming on. We'll talk some football.
Oh, Andy's always full of energy.
Always full of energy.
Yes. Plus,
guy could be the Energizer Bunny.
I had no idea Game 4 was tonight until I just thought about it. Is it tonight?
Care? It is tonight.
I don't care.
97.3 ESPN, 7:30's coverage.
Yeah, sorry, I'm not into it. 3-0. Boston's going to win. It's going to make me feel lousy. Hopefully everybody feels great. Happy Father's Day to all the dads. I'll talk to you Monday.